Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Collapse Talk with your host, Gabriel Marrero, and I'm glad you could tune in. We have a lot to talk about. It's been an exciting couple weeks, early months of 2024, and there's much to discuss, especially within my own personal life, and also just, I guess, with worldwide events, and also, some like social media drama that I'll get into in a bit. Yeah, man, it's just always interesting. I try to take some time. I'm kind of glad I didn't record earlier. Yeah, because if I had, then I would have missed a lot of some recent developments. So, yeah, this is basically I don't know. I wouldn't say it's like decades in a week sort of, event. But yeah, there's just so much. That's why I love this program. There's so much to discuss, and I'm basically just I would like to create more of a discussion. I'm pretty much just giving my own commentary, and I do appreciate those who tune in for that. But yeah, it would be nice to have a little more discussion back and forth. I definitely want to sort of diversify this program because I have my own projects, as I hinted at and discussed. But then I've never really done something like this before, and I have to say, well, okay, do I stick with one subject and then let everything else kind of just do I just stick with one subject, which is going to take a long time, possibly months, or do I rotate it? So I will say, I don't want to present at least a bit of a roadmap, because a lot of these things, I didn't have the time before to dedicate towards, because I just had to work and actually graduate and just survive essentially. So now that I'm in that position of, as I completed with my bachelor's, now it's the long run of establishing a proper career, especially since I want to do online commentary, which is an uphill battle. It really is, especially if you want to do it as independently as possible. Again, with my Spotify and that Anchor FM platform that I have, there are some advertisements, so it does generate some revenue, but it's I have to record more consistently if I'm going to build that up. Yeah. Anyway. So before we get into the main show, I do want to plug in some of my other social media platforms that I have. Mainly on Twitter or x.com. I mainly just offer my insight into recent events in real time. Mainly shit posting, so mainly just try to have fun. But you can follow me there, CollapseTalkPod on Twitter, and other platforms, also YouTube. That's where I release as well. And yeah, Instagram, CollapseTalkPod, definitely just check out there. But yeah, and I'll have a Patreon as well. So that is also what I want to plug in as well, just for any direct support that anybody would want to do. Just $1 support, that at least helps out, and then you can get this show early. With that being said, we will dive now into the program. I did, however, want to talk about, like I said, some personal developments and also some social media, I guess drama you could say. But yeah, I mean, mainly just personally, it's been a rough week. I had a recent loss, not of a person, but of an animal that was really special to me. This cat that I had rescued some time ago. They were, I couldn't keep them. It was her pattern was so beautiful. But yeah, I found her as a kitten, and I was moving back in with my mom at the time. And she can't accept cats, so I knew I couldn't keep them. And I was able to foster away this cat with some friends of mine. Yeah, so I was at least hopeful that the cat would be safe and okay with them. And they did treat her well. They did treat the cat well. They loved her, but they let her out to explore and such. And I kind of hinted at them to keep the cat inside. Again, though, I can't, monitor the cat every minute, so they left the cat out, and a lot of people do this. People don't have the worst intentions when they let their cats out, but then situations like this happen where the cat passed away due to a road accident, and it's sad. It's like losing a child. That's the way it feels. I've never had a loss like this before, because usually the losses that I've had, they were with my grandma. She was older, her health, and I was young too, so I didn't really have that time with her. And then I've lost other pets. Like I lost a rat once. I had pet rats. And one of my rats was sick. She was already like 2 years old, which is pretty old for a rat. So I kind of like prepared myself for the inevitable. But this is just, a tragic accident. Perfectly healthy cat, active, and I didn't get to spend as much time. I only got to see her once when she was grown, and I really wanted to see her some more, and now it's gone. It's just, that's so sad. I don't want to start crying again, but that was just, yeah, because the friend that I had, she texted me really early, and like I didn't have normally I have the sleep mode on, so that way I don't get disturbed, but for whatever reason I had forgotten to put that on. So I got the notification, and yeah, I couldn't sleep for the rest of the day. It was just so sad. Although I have another cat, so I'm living on my own still, and I have this gray tabby, and she's just like laying down looking at me. But yeah, I'm thinking about her. I'm like, dude, I don't want to. I can't even think about anything happening to her. Like I had a dream once where like I accidentally closed my door on her tail, and that literally just like woke me up. Like I just like, because it was just like man, again, it's like your child, it's just like you can't imagine anything horrible happening. It's just like it makes you so sad just to think about it, even though you certainly take care of them. Yeah, and she's never been outside. I need to get a harness for her because I would like to take her outside, but I'm not gonna just let her run around. And there's like a cat colony like right in our apartment. There's like, yeah, like I remember this summer, that the recent summer, I just like randomly went to get some McDonald's, and this of course was before the boycott, but whatever, it's late night sort of munchies, and I went into the drive-through, and as I was going to the drive-through, and it was late, I just randomly woke up, and I'm like, oh, I'm hungry, so they had the graveyard shift. And I guess, during the night, that's where they do sort of their cleaning. So the guy came out and he was, spraying down the parking lot. And this is in, of course, the middle of the summer where we had a bit of a drought. We had some record heat. And I always think about the cats out here and like how they survive these conditions, because we had our recent freeze, and like those cats are surviving and they have their kittens. And now we're going to get into the summertime and the heat. But yeah, so like I was, as I was pulling into the parking lot, I see the guy, the McDonald's worker, he's spraying down the parking lot just to clean it. And all the cats are out. And it's like, it had to be almost 30 cats. Like, it was crazy the amount of cats that were out. And I was just like, what is going on? And I'm just like, and I think now I realize that because of the heat and also the drought, just like the lack of rain, they didn't have any other way to drink water. So when this guy was spraying the parking lot, like they just like they all came out because that's the only moisture they can get. That's just crazy. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about cats. Cats are great. I love cats. I love animals in general. But people always like, talk shit about them. I always think about like feral cats, and like I think like in America mainly that they're always afraid of people because like Americans are very hostile towards cats. Like I just don't understand it. But we take care of them. Anyway, I just, I had that recent loss that was really on my mind for, like, and it happened at the end of the week, too. It happened on, like, the Friday morning. It's like the whole week I was just like, oh, okay, like, this is an exciting week, so much stuff happening and a lot of talk about. And then my cat dies, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Dude, my cat fucking died the same week as Too Mad. Are you fucking kidding me? That, too. Oh, my God. So okay, because I was talking about my cat and the loss. But now I'll get into some drama, I guess, social media drama and news. Not that this is a social media commentary show, but it is sort of relevant, since I'm doing online commentary. But yeah, it's, I've never mentioned him before, this Too Mad guy, who is, of course, famous for his, like, online, Zoomer sort of pranks, online video call pranks. And then, of course, doing some other unsavory things. I mean, he was a bit problematic. Yeah, a very problematic person. He's like one of those people that's like, oh, okay, it's funny because it's just weird. Like, almost Eric Andre, that sort of style, like sort of raunchiness. and then it gets to like this isn't an act. Like it's only okay for Eric Andre to do stuff like that or others like him because he can drop the act and actually behave like a normal person. It's very different when that's like actually your personality. And then of course he has said racist and pedophilic things and harassment and abuse of other creators and such. So yeah, it's a bit of a checkered legacy that this guy has. And 23 years old, he fucking died. They're saying like ketamine and fentanyl overdose, and nobody really gave a shit. Everybody's just clowning on him. It's just, for a moment I was kind of like sort of pity, like I didn't feel happy about it because like I didn't really care about him. I just felt this sense of pityness because I was just like, this guy threw away his life for nothing just to make a fool out of himself, and then he just dies, unexpectedly, and it's a joke. It's a big joke for everybody. Threw away his life, for what? It's just crazy that this sort of age of media has like created sort of these individuals who make spectacles out of themselves, and then of course when they get their comeuppance or unfortunately pass away, it's just like nobody cares. And I feel bad for his parents. I feel bad for his mom. It's just like how do you? I mean, he certainly burned those bridges a long time before all this. So that's just crazy. That's just crazy. I think about like I wouldn't say I'm like on that level because I do have a bit of an estranged relationship, I guess, with my parents. But it's just like I don't cause issues or troubles like this. Yeah, it's just crazy. Like I know if I tragically passed away, like nobody would be happy. Like not maybe somebody will, who knows? But I know that would be a real loss for some people, especially really close to me. But this guy, he just ruined everything. Just crazy. And then, of course, like, he had, I guess, a whole Discord. I don't even know what they're doing. Like, they're just posting memes. Like, nobody gives a shit. This is crazy, man. Crazy. Wow. And then, yeah. But that's just crazy. My cat died the same week as Too Mad. That's just unbelievable. Like, my cat has more of an effect, like, in terms of, like, loss. Because, it's an animal that was, loved and, valued, like at least myself and the owners that I fostered her with. We feel this immense sense of loss. But then when it comes to like somebody like Too Mad, it's just like nobody cares. It's a dunk, I mean, and because he really did like harass and abuse people. So it's just like, yeah, of course you're going to feel some relief. And I don't blame people for that. Yeah. So anyway, so that's at least one aspect of social media drama in the last week. But then we have some other interesting developments with some other personalities. And, I mean, I don't, again, this is sort of like leftist political commentary, and it has to do with the confirmation of Vosh being a bit of a porn addict. And honestly, like a pedophile. Yeah, it's just crazy. I haven't really mentioned Vosh before on my podcast, or maybe I have in the past, and that was before I fully understood just how bad he was. Because there was a time where I was following him, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I mean, he of course he gave off that like Reddit atheist edgelord sort of vibes, and for a time I did listen to it. It did sort of set me like off when it set off a red flag when I saw the like Professor Flowers sort of debate and eventual harassment. And actually I noticed that he has a lot of like beefs with like leftist women of color. Like he spends a lot of time shitting on leftists as a supposed leftist. It's just kind of interesting. Again, he's one of those like leftists who unironically believes in like the tanky sort of, oh, look, there's a tanky in the chat, that sort of thing. Like, it's just like, grow up, man. Like, you have to use his name calling because he's a leftist, but like his audience base are incredibly like vitriolic towards like actual revolutionary leftists. And he spends a lot of time also trying to like talk about like, oh, anti-white sentiments or, It's like, what the hell's going on? But anyway, what I want to discuss at least is the recent development of him accidentally revealing thumbnails of pornographic content of like anime hentai, which they call lolicon, which is essentially drawn images of children, sexual abuse content. But of course, it's that loophole of like, oh, it's not a real child, or a 9,000-year-old being, or or his defense was like, oh, I thought it gave me Goblin short stack vibes. Like what? Like what does that even mean? And it was like Goblin child pornography, like horse rape hentai. It's just like, dude, like what the fuck? How do you even, like, I'm kind of concerned about somebody overhearing me, because it's like, what are you talking about? Like exactly, it's just like he's trying to defend it, and it's like, if I explain it to any sane person, just like the basic details of it, they're just gonna be like, stop talking. Like it's just so depraved, like everything that's being discussed here. Yeah, man. I just, and again, like this isn't the only instance. Like there's been so many like videos of him just talking. I mean, like it's a routine subject matter of him talking about like hentai or some sort of pornographic content, or lollies as it's called. It's just crazy. Or just like even mentioning about pornography, like trying to like debate or child pornography. Like, I guess I'm going to butcher his sort of debate, but he was trying to talk about like, well, you see, there's unethical, use of mineral resources that we can use ethically, so that could also be used for sexual abuse content, or I don't know. It's just like I'm just like, what is happening here? So, it took me a while to eventually find that out. So of course, that's when I stopped listening to him, and then now, of course, this sort of reveal happened that was very public and also very sloppy. You would think if you're saving that sort of material, that you would do a better job hiding it. Like you use it on your work computer. Like hello? It's just like crazy. Like that's just sloppy, honestly. My goodness. Like it would, like if it were just like images of like grown women, like it would still cause a controversy, because like that would just illustrate like an unhealthy relationship to porn. But then of course you dive deeper, like what is it? It's drawn lolicon and horse. Like why are horses involved? Like I think one thing he said, one defense is like, no, like you don't understand. I want to be the my goodness. It's like, I want to be the horse fucking the goblin child. Like, god damn it. It's just like, I hate this so much. I'm just like, how I hate that I even have to talk about it, but because this guy has over 400,000 followers, okay, on YouTube, okay, like hundreds of thousands of people follow this dude. Okay, that's the issue, not what he says, because he's nobody. In a sane world, like it would already be like understood that this guy is out of his mind, and we're not even going to give him the light of day. But because he has like so many followers who are defending him very, very like harshly, very harshly defending him, it's just like, this is concerning. So it sort of like influenced me to study about online fan cultures, and like I've been reading about social capital, like the concept of social capital. Again, this is like very, like I said, this is like part of the subject matters that I'm like rotating to research on with like different articles and journals. But yeah, like I mean, this is like an online personality cult. Like this is an online personality cult, and it's just crazy. It's just like, it's literal like animated child pornography, and like every same person recognizes it. But of course, the internet has created an environment where anybody can connect with anybody, and they feel a personal, like parasocial relationship to him. So it's like, well, he's my buddy, he's like, the reason he is successful and like sort of recognized on online commentary is because these followers are giving him money. So it's just like, he's making a career out of this. It's crazy. And of course, he released a recent video, like almost 2 hour long. I didn't even watch it because it's like, the title was, 'How to Stop Child Pornography in America.' And it's like, what? It's like the reason he is successful and like sort of recognized on the the context. And it's like, the context of what? That you're into child horse porn? Like, dude, like, if it gets that bad, like, you gotta get help. And he, like, I don't understand why he came out immediately, like, into defense. Like, it would have been best if he just took a break, just ignore it, or not even address it. I don't know, man. But he has to go overtime to defend it, and his fans have to go overtime. Like, it's crazy. Like, I went onto the subreddit, and like nobody was talking about it. And in the one few instances it was mentioned, it's like, well, he's always been open about this. Well, it's just horse porn, okay? Like, oh my goodness, man. Yeah, it's just crazy, unbelievable. I mean, because I constantly think about, like, as I continue with this work, and of course, like the way that you gain traction, especially with online commentary or just like online work in general, is you have to create a community around the program, and that's something that I still have to work on. I have like a couple interactions, but like I'm sort of the kind of person who's in the shadows, or I don't know how to properly say it. I just try to be careful, I don't DM anybody, like if I'm having interactions, it's like public comments. There's been a couple times where people have messaged me, but otherwise I don't talk to anybody. And it's probably why I don't have as much momentum, is because I try to like keep it within myself, keep it within my own boundaries. But, it would be good to like step out. So that's something that I've been thinking about. Like, should I do collaborations, more interviews? Anyway, so, I mean, that's just like one aspect of it. So, and of course, if I'm going to build a community, I want it to be a positive and, healthy one. Because, of course, you get into a situation like this where the content, leader, I guess, I mean, he's like, yeah, like I said, it's a cult. It's a personality cult. So it's based around Vosh. Okay, not that he adds anything of substance. He doesn't really say anything insightful. They're just there because they've attached to this personality that they identify with. And of course, he's like a polarizing, controversial figure, and they're ride or die for this guy. It's just like, it's kind of crazy. It's just like, man, like what I would do, what would I would do to have a following that's disloyal? Okay, like I need to start a cult. I'm joking, obviously, but it's just like, it's just crazy to see like these fucking losers. I mean, they're fucking losers, but they've somehow, because they're charismatic, okay, and they know how to talk, and also they know how to like, because there's been times where I've been thinking like I should just call them out and debate them, but then the debates that I do see of them, it's like it goes nowhere. It's just entertainment. It's just slop. Okay, and then you just got this guy who's just like, oh, I got you. Oh, like, it's just like gotchas. That's all it is. They're not saying anything. It's like gladiatorial sort of theatrics. It's just, so, yeah. I don't know if I would ever get to a point where this guy would want to, call me out, but it's just like, don't debate the fucking goblin horse porn addict, okay? Like, don't do it. Just, it's done. Everybody's seen it. And, it's a good thing that like Ethan Klein did his video going over it, because he's sort of like a normie online creator. He gets plays, So the fact that he's calling Vosh out, did a whole like 4-hour podcast on it, that's a done deal, Because now the normies that are, sort of susceptible to these things, which like I think even before this, most normies would have recognized that like this guy's weird, like, so like that's why it's kind of like difficult to like address the influence that they have, because the people who are already going to be influenced by this, they're already freaks to begin with. So it's just like most normal people are going to see it and they're going to be like, oh, never mind. Like, yeah, especially now. But of course, Vosh has been losing followers. I think he's lost over 10,000 followers. Let me see where his subscriber base is at. Okay, so for like a couple days he's been at 458,000, which again is crazy that he even got to that point. And it's crazy that like the only like consequences has been like 10,000 losses. 10,000 losses. I mean, who knows what happens in the long run? But it's like, it's crazy still that he has retained that sort of audience base. Now, of course, a lot of those numbers, they may be inactive users, so that's another factor. But it's not like 50% are all inactive. Like, a good portion are going to be active. And again, that's just crazy. And and the thing about it is that, like, these sort of things that are so obvious, like, it might be too late. Like, there might be a controversy down the line that's going to be, it's sort of like, I don't want to present hypotheticals, but like there have been reports or anecdotes of him harassing and abusing other online figures, or I didn't even know this. Like, apparently he was part of the Destiny Discord, and he was such a sex pest that he got banned, and that's what caused the schism. Like, it's crazy to think about. But yeah, like, it's just like this sort of thing. Like, the only way that it could truly face any consequences if it's sort of earth-shattering, sort of, you could say, tragedy, or sort of negative development. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like somebody would have to get like hurt before any sort of like intervention is made, and that's really messed up. It's just I don't know. Who knows what consequences come down the line, but this will certainly be brushed under the rug by the follower base, and he's going to get right back onto his scheduled program. I mean, that follower base, they've already been through years and years of revelations about this guy, and they're still with him, so I don't think this will shake anything. And then these guys also want to claim to be leftists. That's the crazy thing, like, because they're trying to be like, oh, we're the true arbiters of Marx or whatever, even though they talk shit about tankies all the time, which are usually like, the actual like revolutionary leftists. They always talk shit about revolutionary leftists, or say like the Black Panthers, calling them black nationalists, or they talk about like anti-whiteness in the left, or it's just weird things. It's a weird community, and I don't want to spend too much time on that. That's at least the recent sort of week in terms of like drama, social media drama, or at least the one that's like sort of consequential for this online sort of community. Yeah, man. And then of course my recent loss with the cat, which I'm still pretty sad about. I don't want to be too like, sometimes I see the pictures and I'm just like, God, it's like, that cat was so beautiful, man. Like, I just like, I don't want to be mad and blame people, but it's just like, this is why you keep your cats inside. And hopefully they learn this lesson. Anyway, now that's at least, the opener for tonight's program. I'm recording late in the day, actually, because there's been some maintenance. Those guys are, pretty loud. But, it's good that at least that they're making some renovations out here, because this place, the rents keep going up and it's still kind of pretty shitty. So I can't complain if they like fix some of the, wood foundations or whatever. But yeah, so now at least, talked about that drama and, recent loss. Now, of course, we're going to talk about the actual developments in the show. Just with this program, I would like to divide different subjects based on domestic issues, based on geopolitical, international issues, and then, natural phenomenon. Yeah, so for the last couple episodes, though, there's been so much, happening that I've had to kind of put that aside to specifically talk on different developments, especially with the Israel-Gaza genocide that's occurring, and also with Ukraine. There have been recent developments, dramatic developments. But yeah, for this episode, though, I'm going to stick to the domestic and, original like segments. So first, I'm going to speak domestically about the United States. And yeah, of course, there have been some developments. And, I live in Texas, which, of course, had a pretty interesting couple weeks. So we're going to talk about it because I think this represents some real trouble down the line. And this does pertain to the border, sort of migrant crisis that supposedly exists, but it's just manufactured because we have neo-Nazi government in this state that wants to start a Holocaust. I mean, that's what they're like. That's what they want to do, and of course, that is concerning. Speaking as a Hispanic person myself, so I mean, my family doesn't exactly see the sort of danger that we may face down the line. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to tell them. I mean, look what this sort of federal standoff that recently happened, and Biden just completely caved. It's fucking crazy. Like this state government is increasingly defiant against the federal government, and nobody pays attention. It's just unbelievable. So I wanted to talk at least about the standoff at Eagle Pass, and this is reading from the Texas Tribune. So here, in Eagle Pass, the tense border standoff between Texas and the federal government is reaching a crescendo, and this was written on January 22nd. So this is, yes, a couple weeks ago. But yeah, it's just crazy to think about. Of course, now it's sort of died down because Biden folded, and then he's trying to make some compromise with this emergency bill. I mean, I don't even pay attention anymore, but it's just like unironically, I support the federal government just completely kicking out the state government here. Like, unironically, okay? Like, the Reconstruction needs to be brought back. Yeah, man, I'm just done with this. I'm done with Greg Abbott. I'm done with Ted Cruz, Ken Paxton, all these other fucking dickheads. I'm done with it. Anyway, so here, Texas Tribune. Again, this is from Eagle Pass. On a chilly January afternoon, a military drone hovers over Shelby Park as Texas National Guard members pull boats from the Rio Grande and slide them onto trailers. Shipping containers topped with concertina wire line the riverbank, where men in fatigues erect a bilingual sign near the boat ramp that reads, "No migrant processing at this location. Please proceed to the nearest port of entry for processing with U.S. Border Patrol." The entire 47-acre park, including the golf course, is enclosed with concertina wire and patrolled by state troopers from Texas and Florida. At the entrance, behind a chain-link fence, the 3 National Guard members lean against a green Humvee strapped with rifles. Quote, "It looks like a war zone in a third world country," said real estate agent and Eagle Pass resident Carlos Herrera, who lives nearby with his wife and baby daughter. So it's just kind of crazy that they're talking here like, they have these wires and, Humvees and guards, and there's a golf course. It's just like, you can't get any more American than this. And, there's people trying to get into the country to live a better life, and they're just going to be sent to a camp. Or sent into a camp or put in the bus and then taken to Chicago or New York because our fucking racist governor is a human trafficker or some shit. It's just I read this shit and it just makes my blood boil, and it just makes me hate this government so much, the state government. So yeah, continuing. So no one can enter the city park without asking permission. Soldiers let 2 journalists pass and wander around the park last week, but U.S. Border Patrol agents are strictly prohibited from park grounds, according to the U.S. Department of Justice. The park has turned into a battleground in an escalating legal fight between the Biden administration and Governor Greg Abbott, who for the past 3 years has convinced state lawmakers to spend more than $10 billion in an attempt to deter hundreds of thousands of migrants who have crossed the Rio Grande into Texas, many of whom are seeking asylum. So it's just crazy. This is pretty well set in stone that the federal government has authority over border control and entry points, and the Texas government is just wiping their ass with that because we're used to be our own country, and it's like, you fucking Texans stole this land from Mexico, okay? So it's just really ironic that Texas and these Anglo-Americans are saying there's an invasion at the southern border, and it's like, you people invaded this land. It's just unbelievable. Again, just zero irony. Yeah, here. Yeah, and as I said also, Greg Abbott spending more than $10 billion to deter hundreds of thousands of migrants, or, shipping them into different blue cities, the so-called sanctuary cities that they say. It's just crazy, man. Like, this is so racist, man. So fucking racist. God, I just hate the state so much. Okay. Yeah, caught in the middle are residents of this mostly Mexican-American town of 28,000 residents. Some who say they feel helpless after the state seized their park. Revenue-generating events like Noches Mexicanas, an annual family event with live music and vendors that are scheduled for the spring in Shelby, may be canceled. So it's just like, it's so funny. They're harassing migrant, Mexican or Central American migrants, and then at the same time, the local Tejanos, who again, they're the real Texans, the indigenous people in essence, they're being occupied by the state government. It's just crazy. Like, honestly, like, you read about like the way the state has treated Mexicans, Tejanos, it's ridiculous, man. Like this place is so shitty. Like, God. And then I have to worry about being Hispanic person. Again, I'm Dominican. But, if some fucking racist Trump supporter wants to harass me, it's like, I can't be like, no, actually, I'm not Mexican. And actually, I was born in Chicago. And these guys also want to take away birthright citizenship. It's just unbelievable. So, yeah, so they had these events that were, helpful for the community, for their economy. And this fucking National Guard occupation has taken that away. Just crazy. So, yeah, here... Quote, if you ask every citizen here in Eagle Pass, if you talk to them, they're going to tell you they wish everything would go back to normal, Herrera said. Quote, they wish we can have our event at Shelby Park like we do every year for the past 20 years, but can we do anything about it at this point? I don't think so, end quote. Yeah, unbelievable. So continuing, during the Trump administration, there were also large increases in migrant apprehensions at the U.S.-Mexico border, but when President Biden took office in 2021 and began canceling some Trump policies, Abbott launched an effort that put the state on a collision course with the federal government over immigration enforcement. Under federal law, the federal government has sole authority to enforce immigration laws, a power that has been affirmed by the Supreme Court decisions. But since March 2021, Abbott, under the banner of an effort he dubbed Operation Lone Star, has sent state troopers and National Guard members to different parts of the 1,200-mile Texas-Mexico border, ordered state police to arrest migrants on suspicion of trespassing, lined the river at Shelby Park with shipping containers, ordered 70,000 rolls of concertina wire to be deployed along 29 miles of the river in Maverick County, which includes Eagle Pass, and erect about a dozen miles of border walls in different parts of the border at the price of $1.5 billion. So you see all this like mobilization and resources and finances, and it's just like our state government like doesn't care about the infrastructure, and again, like, our public education system is like the worst. Yeah, man, like this is our this is our priority at the moment. Stopping like single mothers and children, migrant children. Like families, like the whole family, like trying to come into the country. And this is supposed to be the land of opportunity. Like, it's crazy, because this is what always gets me upset about these anti-migrant conservatives, because they try to say, well, they should just stay in their own country and, try to fix their own problems instead of coming here. But then, like, anytime they elect a leader who's actually going to develop their country and provide economic stability, they get cooed. Like, it's crazy. Like, it happens all the time. It's like, you would think really people will like want to like leave everything, their homes, everything that they know. You think they want to come here because like they just like have everything so good over there? Like, no, like they have nothing. There's, they have nothing. Like, they have no other choice. They have to survive. They have to work. And then, of course, we destroy the world. And then we complain when the migrants start showing up. Like, it's just unbelievable. And then this is how right-wing this country is becoming now, because even now certain liberals are starting to like be like, I mean, as we see here with Biden, I mean, he spent a long time talking shit about the border wall and making fun of Trump, and then look what he's doing. He's like actually like acquiescing to this sort of hysteria. And I think the calculus that he's trying to make is that because he's losing young people due to his unconditional support for Israel, his thinking is possibly, let's, start getting tough on the border. Maybe we can sway some conservative right-wing people, which of course never works. Courting a right wing never works. It's just like, I don't know, man. It's just unbelievable. So anyway, let's read a little further. So they talk about that. And then also they talk about the Supreme Court decisions. I mean, this is pretty clear cut. The federal government has authority of international borders, but the state government doesn't care about that. And then also there was a recent Supreme Court order saying that federal agents have the authority to cut wires because it's their jurisdiction. But again, that didn't stop Greg Abbott. And dude, I kid you not, like, they were already mobilizing other red states that were sympathetic. They were already mobilizing their National Guard. And then, like, there was one interview with the Oklahoma state governor where he's just like, well, if there's a force-on-force contact, then we're ready for that. So it's just like, it is absolutely crazy that you have any sort of state official saying that sort of thing, that, like, they are totally willing to fire upon federal troops. And again, I'm saying this, I don't care about this federal government. I don't care at all. But when it comes to these right-wing neo-Nazi governments, these states, like, it's very obvious that I'm going to have to choose the federal government. So it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, I try to have, like, a game plan to leave Texas, but my family has no plans whatsoever. So it's just, and the more I try to educate them on this, the more resistant they are. They don't see the threat. It's sad. It's really sad because there may come a point, if this escalates further, there may come a point where I'm just going to have to leave everybody because it's just like, the state is too dangerous for us. It's like, you think they're going to stop there? Migrants at the border? It's like, what's going to happen when they start enforcing, like, if this government wants to secede, okay, and they actually do follow through with that, it's like, am I going to wait around and have cops fucking harass me over my citizenship? Because that's what's going to happen. It's like literally the night before I graduated, I got pulled over because the cops said my headlights were out, which they weren't. But that didn't stop him. He wanted to fuck with me. He said first my headlights and my backlights were out. And I'm just like, what? And then, like, he said, well, my headlights were out. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking? I mean, like, but I didn't want to say anything. I didn't, it's just like, just let him say what he wants to say. And of course, he let me off with a warning, I guess, because he saw I had no priors. It's like, he ran my record. Everything is clean. It's just like, what are you going to fucking, like, what? Unbelievable. Fucking cops, man. Wow. And then these are the guys that I have to put my life in, trust into. They don't give a shit about me. So, anyway. That's at least some initial confrontations. Oh, yeah. And then also here, what happened, because, again, like, there's all this wire and fortifications on the riverbanks. People are drowning. There was a report of a drowning of some children, 3 migrants, and the Texas National Guard and Border Patrol, they just sat and watched. They didn't do anything. And then even Greg Abbott is saying things like, well, if I could order them to shoot on sight, I would. And it's just like, and it's just fucking crazy. You say anything remotely positive about migrants, and it's like, what, you support the cartel? And it's like, this family that is at the cartel, that these, like, children, orphan children, single mothers, are they all cartel? Like, unbelievable. Again, like, it's a Holocaust. Like, that's what they want. They want to start a Holocaust. Like, it's just unbelievable. So anyway, reading at least this sort of dispute, because there's dispute of accounts, but regardless, children drowned in the river. So here, the tension between the Border Patrol agents who have guarded the border alone for generations and the recently arrived state forces have ramped up. On January 12th, National Guard members at the park blocked a Border Patrol agent from accessing the river after 3 migrants drowned while crossing the Rio Grande, and 2 other migrants were still struggling in the water, according to a court filing by the U.S. Department of Justice. According to the filing, Mexican immigrant officials alerted Border Patrol agents at 9 p.m. that night that 2 migrants were in distress on the American side near the boat ramp at Shelby Park. An hour earlier, a mother with 2 children drowned in the same area, according to the Department of Justice. When a supervising Border Patrol agent told National Guard troops at the park gate about the migrants in distress, one of them responded that they had orders to deny Border Patrol entry. The Border Patrol agent asked to speak with the National Guard supervisor, who told the agent that, quote, Border Patrol was not permitted to enter the area, even in emergency situations, according to the court filing. Just absolutely evil, man. These guys are fucking stormtroopers, man. Just fuck Texas, man. Seriously. Since then, National Guard has given Border Patrol access to the boat ramp at the park, but they have to give their names, and the time they entered the park is recorded. According to a statement by Robert Danley, lead field coordinator for U.S. Customs and Border Patrol and Border Protection for the Del Rio area, that was filed with the Supreme Court. The state has denied the Justice Department's version of events, saying that the supervising agent who alerted National Guard members at the gate about the drownings didn't indicate it was an emergency, and that, quote, Mexican officials had the situation under control, end quote, according to a court filing by Attorney General Ken Paxton's office with the Supreme Court. Quote, Texas has conducted a diligent investigation into these allegations that refutes defendants' dire accusation, end quote, the court filing says. Quote, based on that investigation, the 2 Border Patrol agents who approached the gate on January 12th did not ask for admission to Shelby Park to respond to an emergency, nor did they advise either the guardsman or the staff sergeant that an emergency situation had existed, end quote. And then here, continuing, the DOJ said a Mexican search and rescue team recovered the bodies of the three victims, Victorma de la Sancha Cerros, 33, Yorle Rubi, 10, and Jonathan Agustin Briones de la Sancha, 8. The mother and children were from the state of Mexico and were trying to cross the border to escape drug-related violence, National Public Radio reported. So again, they talk about this sort of border wall to stop the cartel, and then the actual victims of the cartel, they just leave them to drown. That's just perfectly symbolic of the situation. Yeah. So anyway, so it's completely militarized, and and of course, I mentioned about the locals who are majority Mexican, having to deal with, this occupation. I mean, that's what it is. It's a military occupation in an American town. It's a military occupation in defiance of the federal government. It's just crazy. Like, it's just unbelievably crazy that this is happening, and it is supported by a lot of Texans, and Texans who want to secede. They want to secede, and then look what's going to happen. It's going to be a complete occupation of the entire state. It's like, wow, man. Man, like, I seriously, like, when my parents told me when I was about 12 years old that we were coming to Texas, and I was living in St. Croix at the time in the Virgin Islands, I knew that something like this was coming, and that was the main reason why I was upset and afraid. Not because I was leaving my home, but that we were coming to Texas. That's what scared me. And to see this stuff happening now, after all these years, that has been escalating, okay, this is not a surprise to me whatsoever. But to those who don't pay attention to anything and don't want to be educated, they're so clueless. And then it's going to be too late. It's just, I'm sorry, man. Like, look what's happening. And then also here, so I was talking about the confrontations, the federal government being intervened. There's also now plans by the governor to build a base for the National Guard troops. So, like, this is an escalation. And this is not about the border. Okay, he's not doing this for the border. He is fomenting insurrection. Like, this is how it starts. Like, this guy's gotta go, man. Like, I'm so, like, because this guy got paralyzed from a tree, and it's just like, you would think something like that would, like, cause somebody to be more introspective and more humanizing, but it's like, this guy is just completely, like, I mean, I even read somewhere that, like, he took advantage of, like, this insurance loophole to, like, make a whole bunch of money, and then, like, he passed a law so that loophole could no longer be used. Like, that's the kind of person this guy is. Like, he's a true villain. Crazy. Like, there are evil people in charge of, like, really important positions in this country and in the state. Like, this state is just a dumpster fire, like, completely. Anyway, so I'm continuing at least with, and again, like, I shouldn't say that, because there are a lot of things I like about Texas, okay? Like, sometimes it's cool to say that I'm from Texas, and especially when I go to like New York or something, because I'm like, oh, like, because they're all like street guys, and then like I'm coming in like a cowboy, even though I'm not really that country. But it's cool in that sense. And the things that I like about Texas are the diversity, right? But you have these right-wing Texans that are like, no, we got to stop the border. It's just crazy, man. Crazy. Again, Texas history is cool. Like, I like Texas history. And I live in a town named after a very important Texas figure, Sam Houston, who's surprisingly pretty liberal. I'm not trying to, like, it pays with, like American or Texas history, like, not to idealize white men from that period, because they had a lot of problems. But at least this guy, Sam Houston, he was a little more sympathetic with Indians. He grew up with the Cherokee. He did own slaves, so that was a problem. In terms of like Texas, like, governors, and he was the president even, like he was a little more moderate. And of course, you had other officials who seceded, and he was against secession as well. So there's aspects of that, Texas history that I can at least admire to a degree. But then, of course, it's always appropriated by Texas nationalists, and it's like, they appropriate Sam Houston, these Texas nationalists, but it's like, bro, he would hate you. So it's just like, yeah, it's just crazy. So anyway, so we're talking at least now further escalations by Greg Abbott about his plans to build a base, an 80-acre base in Eagle Pass. So this came out actually within the last week, a couple days on February 16th. So the recent confrontation has passed. Yeah, it's just kind of crazy that he got away with it. Like, there's zero consequences for it. And even Biden is, like, trying to pass some, propose some measures for border security. So, yeah, man, he just completely folded. It's just crazy. And again, like, nobody's going to talk about it. I'm very much paying attention to this. I mean, this is just weak in general. The fact that he did not put his foot down with Governor Greg Abbott to be like, no, the border is federal authority and you will stand down. Again, like I said, like, I was like, so many people were online were like, please, Biden, nuke Texas. Like, I'm like, dude, get rid of these guys. Of course, though, that would be a huge civil war, but I'm just like, I'm fucking tired of it. I don't care anymore. Get rid of these guys, because you're just giving them time to build up more strength. Like, hello? Like, and it's crazy funny. It's just so funny. Like, we run the risk of another civil war because of southern states wanting to be incredibly racist. That just shows like how intertwined race and politics are in this country, where you have like this white nationalist anxiety of being replaced, and it just drives all sorts of like conflicts. And yeah, it's just crazy. So reading from Texas Tribune about this proposed base in Eagle Pass. So as I said, they're escalating, and again, Biden is just giving them more time to build up strength, and then they're also getting troops from Florida and other red states. It's just crazy, like the things that are being set in motion right now. So here, Texas Tribune reporting, Governor Greg Abbott on Friday announced that the state is building an 80-acre base camp in Eagle Pass for Texas National Guard soldiers who are deployed for Operation Lone Star, the $10 billion state effort to deter people from immigrating into Texas illegally. Abbott said the new facility will house between 1,800 and 2,300 soldiers. The base would reach the higher figure if the state deploys more troops to the border, and each will have individual rooms. Quote, before this effort here, they have been living in conditions that were atypical for military operations, Abbott said during a news conference in Eagle Pass. Quote, because of the magnitude of what we're doing, because of the need to sustain and actually expand our efforts of what we're doing, it's essential that we build the base camp for the soldiers. So again, I want to reiterate, we are having an open military occupation right now of an American city, of an American town, not by the federal forces, but by insurrectionist state forces. So again, this is not about migrants in the border. This is about insurrection against the federal government. Here, so continuing, he said troops are scattered around the area, living in tents, hotels, and private residence, and some have to drive an hour to get to Eagle Pass. Abbott didn't say how much the new base would cost. His office didn't respond to an email from the Texas Tribune. Again, though, this is already costing $10 billion. So, they're going to build a base. And of course, in that base, it's going to require supplies. It's going to require fuel and food and then there's going to be further deployments as well. It's not going to just be Eagle Pass. I bet you El Paso as well. Maybe even Brownsville. Just basically all along the border region. It's just crazy. So, Texas Major General Thomas Sulzer said that by mid-April, the base would be able to hold 300 soldiers and will add 300 more beds roughly every 30 days until the base is complete. Since launching Operation Lone Star in March 2021, Abbott has sent state troopers and the National Guard to different parts of the state's 1,200-mile border with Mexico. An estimated 3,000 Texas soldiers are now deployed to the border, where they have helped state troopers apprehend migrants, many of whom were charged with trespassing on private land, erect barriers on land and water, and most recently block U.S. Border Patrol agents from entering a city park in Eagle Pass that the state enclosed with concertina wire. According to a 2022 investigation by the Military Times and the Tribune, the deployment has faced a myriad of problems. 1 in 5 soldiers reported problems with their pay, including being paid late, too little, or not at all for months, shortages of critical equipment, including cold weather gear, medical equipment, plates for their ballistic vests, and troops living in cramped trailers. So it's just been a fucking mess. Again, it's a circus. It's just a fucking mess. Okay, like having equipment issues, pay issues. Like I bet you their morale sucks, and it's just like they're just giving shit orders to fucking watch children drown in the river, and this is our glorious state. My goodness, it's just crazy. Like I had with my my father, he recently married, and like there was a time where like she gave my dad a brochure for me to join the Army Reserve, and I was just like, that was just such a slap in the face, or something like National Guard. Like I would have to do some stupid shit like this, like it's just like, again, people who are involved in that sort of line of work, they don't really got much going on, and they don't have much of a choice but to be in the shit. That's crazy. And it's so funny that like joining the National Guard, especially like during the Vietnam times, that was like the ticket to at least not get deployed. And then like all the draft dodger presidents, like they deploy the National Guard. It's just so funny. So stupid. Yeah, again though, imagine being like a state soldier, not like the real federal forces, but like I wonder like if there's like a lot of shit talking between like the federal troops and the National Guard troops. Like I'm just curious. Like anyway, but yeah, that's at least the border. They try to frame it as a crisis. It's a fucking, like I said, it's a circus show. Like there's no crisis. There's no border crisis. Okay. Those migrants are not coming here to like destroy the country, the family values and our demographic fabric. It's just white anxiety of being replaced. Again, they always project their own history onto like these supposed migrants and invaders. They're going to come here and they're going to replace us. And it's like, okay, who cares? Like, I can't. Like, imagine being so fucking racist that like you're going to hate your own grandchildren because they're a different skin color than you. It's like, bro, that's still your blood. That's still your gene, your bloodline, right? And you're hung up about whether somebody's pale enough for you. Like, get the fuck out of here, man. Like, God, it's so stupid. Unbelievable. And then you have like figures like Matt Walsh or Ben Shapiro, just Fox News in general, where they're spreading this propaganda, this racist propaganda, and then you have a mass shooter that is saying the exact same things, okay? Like the exact talking points, okay? And there's been multiple of this, okay? Multiple mass shootings. Again, there was one mass shooting in El Paso, where he specifically targeted Hispanic victims. And again, there was the Buffalo mass shooting as well. There were just so many of them. Like you just lose track. But it's just like they always release a manifesto saying why people are being replaced. It's the exact same talking points. Like you can even find their You can even find their search history, and it's all like this, all these right-wing, alt-right figures, and nothing's done about it. And I'm just unbelievable, man. Like what is happening with the right wing in this country? It couldn't be more obvious that they're becoming radicalized and more dangerous. Like, they pose the greatest domestic terror threat to this country. Like, I was even like, that's another subject I'm looking into is domestic terrorism. And like, pretty consistently when I was looking through like on JSTOR for different articles, the only, like, I didn't even look up, I deliberately just put in domestic terrorism. So I didn't put anything politically leaning. I tried to just make it as neutral. It's just domestic terrorism. And almost consistently, everything was talking about the far right. Everything. Like, it is so apparent that there is a domestic terror issue with the right, the domestic, far right. And again, it's like, look at the mobilization by the police whenever Palestinian protesters get out, okay? Like, you look at New York and like all the different attacks that the police commit against protesters. And it's like, whenever there's like literal fucking Nazis with swastika, it's like, no, they have to exercise their freedom of speech. But then left-wing Antifa, protesters, anti-cop city protesters, they get raided, they're getting RICO charges, all this bullshit. Fucking neo-Nazis, well, they have an exercise right to freedom and speech, and unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. It's just so obvious what's happening. And again, it's like, if you talk about it, you're the issue. You keep bringing up these problems. You just focus on your own issues. That's sort of the attitude. So, yeah, I mean, that's at least sort of talking about Texas and their increasing defiance to the state government or to the federal government, and also just the increasing radicalization of the right wing that is very likely going to reach a fever point. I mean, this, again, we're now in election season. There have been some results. Again, I don't care about the results at this moment. I mean, yeah, there's the primaries, and I have been following that a bit, like New Hampshire, and I mean, the Democrats didn't even have any primaries. They're just straight like, we're sticking with Biden, and you're gonna deal with it, like, which is gonna bite them in the ass. I don't know what they're thinking. They're gonna fucking lose. Yeah, and then of course with Trump, he's of course winning all the Republican primaries, and it's like between him. I mean, it's between him and Nikki Haley, which, I mean, she's still not gonna get anywhere. Yeah, Ron DeSantis is out. All the other candidates, I already forgot them. They're out as well. And it's so funny, like, fucking Nikki Haley in the Nevada primary, she lost to nobody. Literally, like, the results selection of none of the above won over Nikki Haley. I'm just like, and she's still in it. She's still, going for it. I mean, it's just crazy. Wow, man. It's just crazy. Again, like, it's too many liberals, okay? Like, they try to pretend like, no, you see, we might have our differences with conservatives, but ultimately we're Americans at the end of the day. And it's like, look at the shit that they're supporting. Look at who they're voting for. Like, they're just Trump all the way. It's just fucking crazy. It's a whole cult. It's a personality cult. Unbelievable, man. I can't. And it's getting to like a critical moment where, like, I don't know what the DNC is even planning, why they're sticking with Biden. It feels to me that they're trying to lose on purpose. I don't understand it. It is so obvious at this point that Biden is unpopular and he's too old. Okay, they were talking about Bernie Sanders being too old. Like, no, like, Biden is actually too old. Okay, he's very clearly declining cognitively. Okay, he called the president of Egypt Mexican. It's just like, it's so funny. It's so funny. Everything is happening. It's just like so dystopian. Like, I made a comment where I'm like, and all of his handlers, okay, like, I don't even want to call them like secretaries or like they're handlers, they're enablers, okay? It's like they're like the eunuchs in the imperial court, where it's like, You have this like child emperor who can't run anything. So all his like counselors and like they're all conspirators, and they're all concerned about their own personal wealth. Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. The things that like, again, this is why like there was a time where I was kind of like involved with grassroots organizations and canvassers, but it's like this is why I didn't really fully pursue a career in that, because when you see, like the press secretary, like all of those people at one point started out like that, like canvassers and grassroots organizers and such, and then they got into the White House and it just completely sold their soul to the devil. And like the things that they're saying, like it's so dystopian watching these press events now, especially when they're pressed about Israel and their war crimes, and it's just like, well, we can't confirm or deny that. Or they recently like denied Biden's cognitive tests for the physical. It's just like, it's just crazy. They just randomly decided not to do the physical for this like 80-year-old man who was very clearly forgetting his like place, and like it's just like unbelievable. What is happening? Unbelievable. Like I don't want to bring up any. Again, I know this is a personal issue for them because it's a personal tragedy. But again, like his son died from brain cancer. Okay, so maybe there is a sort of hereditary issue in terms of cognitive issues. I mean, again, like I don't want to bring that up, but it's just like there's a problem here. Like you don't even have to go off that. Just like look at how he's talking. He's very clearly an old curmudgeon. You can see like the difference between like 5 years ago Biden versus now. It's just like it's just how are you doing? Like, and then you want this guy in the Situation Room if some shit goes off with Russia, or it's just like who's in charge? I mean, Kamala, of course, has the chain of command, but it's just like all this is crazy. And again, the fact that they have to go overtime, all these different like representatives for Biden just be like, he's strong, he's virulent, he's like a bull. He's like unbelievable. So yeah, so at least trying to read from the Hill about different analysis of Biden and his abilities, and the sort of lack of confidence that the majority of voters feel. Because I mean, if you talk to regular people, they already kind of know that Biden is sort of falling apart, but it's like, I don't know who else to vote for. Like people don't really take this seriously. Like people aren't voting for Biden because they believe in him. They're voting for Biden for fear out of Trump. And that's for some reason the strategy that the DNC is going to go off, because they think that the fear of Trump is going to push people into a certain way. And that's not strong enough. Like, again, that's a shitty way to play politics too. Like you're just going to be like, we're not going to offer you a real policy platform. We're just going to, give you a candidate because the other guy is worse. And, this is my position. It's like, okay, well then fuck you. It's like if you're gonna blackmail me and play chicken, then let's do it. Like I don't care anymore. Like, okay, it's like I really don't care anymore. I mean, at this point, because I was thinking about voting, maybe third party, maybe Cornel West, but then his campaign has been a bit off as well. I just don't believe in any of this anymore. I'm just like, I'm done. I might just completely abstain, because who am I gonna vote for locally? It's all these like right wing, country folks. So it's just like, I'm just gonna abstain. Like I don't care. Like I don't believe in this country anymore. Nobody wants to fix anything. I just don't give a shit. Like I just don't care. Anyway, so talking about other analysis of Biden and his abilities, reading from the Hill about some comments that Nate Silver has made. Nate Silver, who is famously known for certain election predictions. It's been some time now. I mean, like he had some very good election predictions during was the Romney Obama election, like a very close call that he was able to predict, and then of course everybody brings him back on. But yeah, he's even now saying that Biden has to again, he made a point that's like, if you're going to run Biden, it doesn't show that you're actually concerned or serious about the campaign, because like it's very clear that he's unpopular and very clearly not a confident candidate that people can rely on. So And it's just crazy to show. It's crazy to see the brainwashing that's happening. I call it blue MAGA. Well, not just me, other people have, but the blue MAGA sort of movement forming, where it's like, well, you got to vote blue no matter who, and Biden is our guy. You don't want Trump in office. You don't want Trump in office, do you? I mean, you have to vote. You have to vote. And it's like, but you're blackmailing me. Like you're putting me in a position into somebody that I don't believe in, who hasn't fixed anything. We're worse off now than we were at the beginning. Like, it's just crazy. And then like, this is the guy we got to go for. So anyway, from the Hill, election handicapper Nate Silver, the founder of 538, on Monday called on President Biden to reassure voters he is capable of running a campaign. Otherwise, Silver said, Biden should step aside ahead of the August nominating convention and let the party select a new candidate. Quote, Biden needs to reassure the American public that he's capable of holding public appearances that aren't on easy mode, or he needs to stand down, or he's probably going to lose to Trump, Silver wrote in a post on X, formerly Twitter. In a Substack post, also published Monday, Silver sharply criticized Biden and his team for shielding the president from the media spotlight, in particular for forgetting the Super Bowl interview. Quote, personally, I crossed the Rubicon in November, concluding that Biden should stand down if he wasn't going to be able to run a normal election campaign, meaning things like conduct a Super Bowl interview, Silver wrote. Yes, it's a huge risk, and yes, Biden can still win, but he's losing now, and there's no plan to fix the problems other than hoping the polls are wrong or that voters look at the race differently when they have more time to focus on it. End quote. So again, like, I don't know what they're thinking. It's just like, it really seems to me that they want to lose so that they can blame the left for marginalizing and polarizing the voter base. That's what I feel like is happening. Like, it's just like, it's just crazy because when Biden loses, and he's going to lose, there's going to be a lot of hostilities from the liberals to the left, because it's like, well, you were all about Israel and you divided the young people against us. And it's like, no, you had a weak candidate who fucking sucks. That's why you lose. And you Democrats are bad at politics. It's like, it's sort of crazy. Every time a Democrat gets elected, they have to like reassure people that it's like, oh, I'm going to play fair with conservatives because I believe in democracy. And it's like, they don't play by the same rules. Because every time a Republican gets in power, they don't give a shit. But then when Democrats get in power, it's like, I'm going to personally handicap myself and not follow through on any platform that might actually fix the problems in my voter base. The reason why they elected me. So it's just a waste. Like, these Democrats suck. They don't know, they're bad at politics. And then when they get their comeuppance, they have to point the finger somewhere. So, continuing. Silver wrote that shielding Biden from the media leads people to conclude that there is something to be concerned about. He noted that, quote, even the most optimistic Democrats, if you read between the lines, are really arguing that Democrats could win despite Biden and not because of him, end quote. So here, concerns about Biden's age have come to the forefront, especially following a recent special counsel report that painted Biden as a, quote, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, end quote. Voters had listed it as a top issue in the polls. I mean, like, they were saying that he even forgot that he was vice president. Like, it's not just like some lapse of like memory. Like, he's like forgetting sort of who he is. That's not a good sign in an old man, especially, the leader, the supposed leader of the free world in a time of immense crisis, geopolitical crisis. Continuing, Biden and his allies have criticized the report, saying Special Counsel Robert Hur went beyond his purview and emphasizing that the report exonerates Biden in the confidential document investigation. But Silver argues that the campaign should address the issue head-on. Quote, over the course of the next several weeks, Biden should do 4 lengthy sit-down interviews with non-friendly sources, Silver wrote, noting, non-friendly doesn't mean hostile. Nonpartisan reporters with a track record of asking tough questions would work great, end quote. Quote, a complete recording of the interviews should be made public. The interviews ought to include a mix of different media, television and print, and journalistic perspectives, Silver added. Quote, and I want to continue, quote, so could I, other critics, and 75% of Americans be wrong about this? Sure, I'm wrong about a lot of things, but if we're wrong about this, it ought to be easy to prove, Silver said. Silver's piece comes after New York Times columnist and podcaster Ezra Klein argued Democrats should convince the president not to run again and then pick a new candidate at the party convention in August. A practice, Klein noted, that used to be far more common in presidential elections. So, yeah, there is doubt afoot. And this Democratic convention, I mean, there was no other primaries. So it's just like, are they really going to stick with Biden? Or, I heard that they're soft launching Kamala Harris. I'm just like, I don't understand. Because there's been plenty of times where you had a president seeking re-election, but then there's other candidates in the primaries. But the DNC just said no primaries. It's crazy. It is crazy to see this happening. And like, we're just supposed to go with it, and it's just crazy. And of course, if I just stay pretty explicitly, because at this point, as I said, I'm just most likely going to abstain. There's going to be so many issues. Oh, what, you're not voting? Oh, what? Oh, I mean, I abstained from Biden the first time, but altogether, I just not my vote at all, because like, I just don't believe in this political system anymore, so don't really care. I'm kind of done with everything. Because, again, this is a corporate oligarchy. The candidates that are approved are the candidates that the corporations want. So it's just like, it's not democracy. It's a joke. It's a joke. So, yeah. So here, here just talking at least some other sort of Congress news, because there's been so many proposals and bills, and I had mentioned the border sort of compromises that are being made, which is also affecting military aid to Ukraine, to Israel, and Taiwan. So, again, I don't really keep up with this too much, but it is important to follow, because it's just like, this is where our tax dollars are going towards. And this is increasing military aid that's going to escalate and escalate. And it's like, we're sending all this aid to Ukraine, and it just lost Avdiivka, a pretty significant stronghold. And then there's more advances along the line. So it's like they're trying to fast track this aid. Like, we got to send aid. It's like, we've already sent billions and billions of dollars, and Ukraine is still losing. And now they're starting to run out of manpower. It's like, and this whole political system in Ukraine still refuses to negotiate when it's very clear that they're losing. It's just crazy, man. All of this is crazy. It's a fucking scam. It's money laundering. That's what it is. So here, reading from Politico, just the recent proposals and like bill sort of conflicts. So here, they're saying that there's a bipartisan lawmakers. They're saying from Politico, bipartisan lawmakers unveil $66 billion military aid and border alternative. So here, and yeah, the bill is sponsored by an equal number of Republican and Democrats. A bipartisan group of 8 House lawmakers on Friday unveiled a $66.3 billion proposal to fund military aid for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan in a bid to break the House logjam on the issue between Kiev's war effort sputters. The measure, spearheaded by Ukraine Caucus co-chair Brian Fitzpatrick, is a narrower version of the $95 billion aid package passed by the Senate this week. So they already passed $95 billion, and they want to do another $66 billion. Wow, man. Again, look how quick they can mobilize resources for all these wars. But any problem here in America is just like, whatever, So yeah, the House counterproposal removes tens of billions of dollars in humanitarian and economic aid for Ukraine and Gaza, included in the upper chamber's bill, and leaves the military portion that was in the Senate bill. So maybe this was the same bill. Okay. I don't know. Again, I always get confused with this sort of thing, but anyway, it's still billions of dollars. So here, the bipartisan bill also includes provisions aimed at tightening border security and winning over Republicans who won't approve Ukraine aid without addressing the border. It's just so funny that like Republicans are like, why do we got to send all that money to Ukraine when we can send it here in our own border and drown children here? Like, that's just their attitude. And it's not even like border security. Like, some are just saying straight up they want to invade Mexico. Like, it's just insane. So who's in? The bill is sponsored by an equal number of Republicans and Democrats. In addition to Fitzpatrick, the bill is co-sponsored by GOP Republicans, Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska, Mike Lawler of New York, and Lori Chavez DeRemer of Oregon. 4 centrist Democrats also signed on: Representative Jared Golden of Maine, Ed Case of Hawaii, Marie Gluesenkamp Perez of Washington, and Jim Costa of California. Read here. So here are the highlights of this bill package, and they're going over the different, sort of aid to each country. So for Ukraine, the bill allocates $47.7 billion. That total includes $13.8 billion for the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, for the Pentagon to sign contracts with U.S. defense companies to provide Kiev with new weapons and equipment. Another $13.4 billion would go to the Pentagon to replace weapons sent to Ukraine from U.S. military inventories. Israel, the measure includes $10.4 billion in aid for Israel amidst its war against Hamas in Gaza. That includes $4 billion for Israel's Iron Dome and David Sling air defense system, and $1.2 to field the Iron Beam laser anti-missile system. The Pentagon would also receive an extra $4.4 billion to replenish its stocks of weapons and equipment sent to Israel. Additionally, the bill includes $2.4 billion to support ramped-up operations by U.S. Central Command as troops respond to face attacks by Iran-backed groups in Iraq and Syria. It also funds replacements for munitions used in the Red Sea to defend U.S. ships and international shipping for Houthi attacks. So, yeah, again, look how quickly, when Israel needs aid, how quickly we can send that out, and it's just unbelievable. The money that we're going to sink into this war, that's going to continue to escalate into a regional conflict, and I just, again, Biden should never have peace for supporting this war implicitly and, sending all this money over. Is just crazy. And then it's crazy too, and this is why I fucking hate this country now, because I go onto YouTube or some other social media site and I'll see a charity support ad for children in Gaza are starving, and it's just like, who is starving these children? Oh, it's Israel with our tax dollars. So it's like, so my tax dollars are paying for a humanitarian crisis, and I'm getting ads to send to charities my money again to protect the people who are being killed by my tax dollars. I'm just like, again, I can't express just how disillusioned I am. And again, if you talk publicly about this, oh, you're anti-Semitic. Oh no, you're anti-Semitic. Unbelievable. What a fucking charade. And here they also talk about the Pacific Taiwan aid. So here Pacific also includes $4.9 billion to support Taiwan and other U.S. partners in the Pacific to deter China. That includes $1.9 billion to replenish weapons transferred to Taiwan. An extra $542 million would address unfunded priorities of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. So yeah, that's just what's being proposed. And again, it's just all this war. And again, we're saying this aid, not even that they're going to win. It's just money laundering and to give defense contractors contracts. And yeah, man, it's just crazy. Look at the aid that we're sending to Ukraine. And then again, as I said, they lost Avdiivka, and they're collapsing all along the lines essentially. And now, most likely, and this is my prediction, Russia's going to make a move for Zaporizhzhia. That's a significant escalation in this war, and it's going to continue. They're just going to keep grinding down Ukraine, and then every time they have a military crisis, we got to send more aid. Well, we got to send more aid. Oh no, we got to, and it's not doing anything. It's not doing anything. It's just crazy. And again, as I said, in the last episode, Ukraine was making peace proposals, but it's all these unreasonable demands that Russia has to fully withdraw and return the territorial sovereignty. It's just those are not serious demands, because you can't enforce it and you're losing. The only way Ukraine can survive is if NATO directly intervenes, which is World War III. And for some reason, Zelensky wants that. This is absolutely deranged. Just a corrupt, criminal Ukrainian government throwing its generations of young men, and now they're even mobilizing young women. And I'm not saying that like that's a problem, because of course I do support women in military service, but it's like, if you're getting to a point where you have to start mobilizing your female population, you're losing. Like, you're in a desperate situation. And like, this is a thing too, because a lot of it's all propaganda. So like, they'll have like the women soldiers, but it's like, they're all in their makeup, and they're all, they have like the acrylic nails, and like their hair is just flowing out of their helmets. And I'm like, like everything is just like red flags. Like, nope. Like, that's just, that's what it's all for propaganda. And, that sort of, Israel does this too, right? They do like the clickbaity thirst trap sort of TikToks for their female soldiers. But I'm just like, this is all just, because it shows that they don't take the war seriously. Like, to them, it's just like, oh, well, we're going to go fight for our country. But it's like a social media sort of deal. And then they get into combat. And of course, like, almost immediately, like, they're covered in dirt and blood of their comrades, and like, they're seeing like horrific shit. Because this war is rough on those fronts. It's rough. It's like World War I. Yeah, man, it's just crazy. When you see people like that, Israelis, Ukrainians on social media, like just like dancing or like doing some weird shit, ultimately for military propaganda, it just shows that they don't take this war seriously. So, that sort of arrogance sort of ticks me off, because if you're going into a war, you would think you would have more like discipline, and you would be more serious about the situation. And anybody who goes into a war thinking that they're not going to watch their comrades die or themselves be horribly killed or disfigured, like, that's just somebody that's completely disconnected. So again, people do all kinds of things to keep morale up, but there's a point where it's like, you're no longer trying to keep morale up. You're treating it like a game, and this is not a game. This is war. This is very serious. Yeah, I don't know. And it's just so funny that we're just recently talking about because I was talking about some social media drama, but they were having the discourse about Starship Troopers, because some right-wing Twitter user was like, well, it's not effective satire of fascism, because I actually find fascism appealing. Like, it's just saying like, oh, well, you see, all the characters are incredibly good looking, so clearly they're not the bad guys. It's just like so stupid. Oh my God. It's so crazy. Like, they completely gloss over the very obvious undertones. Like, they say very clearly, service guarantees citizenship. Like, hello, like, you are a full citizen once you have done your duty, served your country, and they don't see that as fascism. They're like, no, yeah, obviously, like, you need to have military service. It's like, dude, like, what is wrong with you? Oh, well, you see, the bugs, they don't represent dehumanization. They represent communism. Clearly, it's just like, they no media literacy, nothing whatsoever. They're just so completely blank and without thought. Yeah, man. That makes me want to watch it again. Oh, actually, I haven't fully watched Starship Troopers, so I need to sit down. But yeah, it's just like, it is so very obviously satire. It's one thing if you don't agree with it, but when you're saying, oh, this isn't satire whatsoever, it's like, are you stupid? Like, come on. Anyway, so, again, that was a lot of details talking about different developments within the government, within our state government, the confrontations that are happening there. Again, they have a military base. Like, there's a whole occupation of an American city by the National Guard in defiance of the federal government. And this is not setting off any alarm bells. And they're continuing to mobilize. They're receiving aid and support from other red states. And they're building military bases. Like, this is very clearly not for the migrants. Unbelievable. And then, of course, we have our president, our glorious president, who's totally fit. He's like a bull. Nothing wrong. Nothing to worry about. Don't ask him to draw a clock. Like, like that sort of thing. My goodness gracious. And I want to talk about again, like, because the liberals are like so like they're creating their own like blue MAGA sort of like cult. I wouldn't even call it a cult, but it's just like they're so worried about Trump that like they don't even want to risk making like, I don't know, like just because there's always this unspoken rule that you're supposed to have two presidents, two consecutive terms. If you have one term, then you're a weak president. So like I guess that's sort of their thinking, that they want they want Biden to continue with two consecutive terms, but it's like it's very clear that it's not working, and it's just doubling down on this. And again, my theory again was that they secretly want to lose so that they can blame the left for dividing the voter base. So anyway, but I do want to talk about sort of, outside of the politics, because there's also some economic developments happening where there have been massive layoffs happening. So there's all these different layoffs. And again, this is quiet at the moment. They're not really trying to highlight this. But I can look up here. When I typed on layoffs, I see all these different articles about different layoffs in the tech industry, also in the video game industry. Nike, they're laying off they're laying off people. Let's see who else. So all these different industries that are experiencing layoffs. Again, they're trying to keep it quiet, but this is not a good sign for things to come. And already, like the UK and other countries are experiencing recessions. Like they're saying technical recession, but it's like we've been in one for some time. Like this isn't like some technical like new reality. Like there's already been economic instability, and it's going to get to a point where we can no longer ignore it. Like the last couple of years alone have had unprecedented bank closures. So there's like an overall trend of a decline happening. And then also like they talk about credit card delinquencies. Those are at record levels. Car payments, record level delinquencies. It's like every metric you can find that there is a underlying economic rot happening. And this is going to continue to exacerbate. So yeah, man, it's a bit of a serious situation at the moment. But anyway, that's just at least something there, and I'll talk a little further about the more global recession news that's happening. But yeah, man, it's just kind of crazy. Yeah, and UPS, they had layoffs as well. It's crazy. It's crazy. And then of course, I'm supposed to get like a job right now, like just right out the gate, and I'm like, I can't. Like they want people with experience. Like a lot of these jobs, they're just like, well, we're impressed, but you don't have the necessary experience, and we're not looking to train. Like none of these jobs want to train. They just want somebody with amazing experience, amazing references. Like this is the problem with these corporations. They literally want perfection, because then they can have that optimal performance. It's like, that's why a lot of them are switching to AI, because like you literally need a robot to get perfection like that. It's just crazy. So that was the first portion of the program, the domestic sort of topics, and that was a big portion of my recording. But yeah, so now I will get into the international sort of geopolitical developments. Much to discuss, again, as we continue to behold in horror the atrocities of this Gaza genocide. That is, again, I said it would get much worse, and it's getting so much worse, and more people are dying. Now, famine is starting to set in. People are starving. People are having to eat animal meal, just like horse meal. That's the only way that they can like bake food and such. This is horrible. This is horrible. It's only getting worse, and Israel is just like they're already making plans. They're already setting up internment zones for the eventual expulsion into the Sinai Desert, which is just going to happen. I don't even, again, like the Arab nations, they're sort of like, except for Yemen and Hezbollah, they're already kind of just like standing like still, because they don't want to make a move. And then of course, if Israel glasses the Middle East, the United States is just going to support it unconditionally. It is so disappointing and really radicalizing to see what's happening here, and it's very clear who the perpetrator and who the bad guy is, and you have to be like gaslit by so many, like, again, like there's a lot of liberals in support of what's happening, so it's just like, it's sort of crazy to just watch unfold. I will say it is promising to see more young people now becoming aware of this and pushing back against it. So that is promising to see, because like, it's crazy, because like I've been following this like sort of conflict since like the 2014 war, if anybody remembers that. And I was already like a junior, like getting into like senior year of high school, and I didn't even know as much as I do now. All I just saw was like there were Palestinians being killed. I saw the racism from Israel and the hatred, and that was all I needed to see. And of course, over the years, I've educated myself more, and it's just so apparent. It's so apparent that Israel is so evil and truly a deranged culture. Okay, like the more you see from Israeli culture, their attitude towards war and violence against Arabs, it's just like, this is so like not okay. And this doesn't represent Judaism. So I'm just saying that flat out. Like, these are not the values that, when I think of Judaism, these are not the values that I ascribe to. It's just like, you know, it's crazy. I mean, again, I haven't even gotten into serious like discussions with any sort of Jewish relatives or friends, but it's just like, this isn't good. And I don't, like, why would you want your culture and your religion to be associated with this just atrocity? You know, like, this is not okay. I don't care what you believe. Like, if I go on my Twitter feed and I see like dead children, dismembered children, it's like, I don't care who, I don't like, oh no, it's okay because they're Jewish. And if I tell them to, you know, stop doing it, I'm anti-Semitic. It's just like, this is bad, regardless of what you believe. It's just like crazy. Like, why would you want your belief associated with this? That's probably why I've had such a good opinion of Judaism over the years, is because they didn't, historically speaking, they weren't associated with these atrocities and this genocides and colonialism. But now they're like, no, we want to do that. It's like, no, like they look at the Catholics like colonizing like America, and like I mean, they were directly inspired by the United States and Canada and the British Empire. They're like, yeah, that's the shit that we want to do. Like, it's just like, why would you? Oh my God, I just, crazy. It's crazy to think about. Yeah, man, it's crazy, because like there are populations of Jewish people in Iran, like Iranian Persians, and under the theocratic regime of Iran, they're treated better than Palestinians under the supposed only democracy in the Middle East. Like, this is fucking insane. Like, if there were Jewish Persians bombing the Iranian government, you know, carrying out terrorist attacks, like, you would see like a lot of these Zionists saying like, well, no, you see, because this is what we have to do, because they're occupied and they're being murdered. And but then when Palestinians do that, oh, they're terrorists and barbarians and we have to massacre everybody. So yeah, so reading from ABC News, they're reporting on like death casualties, and so now they're saying over 29,000. And of course, you know, these are the confirmed deaths that are being counted. There are many thousands more who are most likely gone or dead or just missing under the rubble. I will say, at least in this ABC article, they're saying the Gaza Health Ministry, because so many resources say the Hamas run Gaza Health Ministry. Like, you know, they're trying to plant that language of like, oh, it's Hamas saying this, so take it with a grain of salt. Meanwhile, like, they don't question anything Israel says, because Israel is a reliable source, and it's like they have been lying for so long. Like, again, like, I bet you like these Israelis, these Zionists, like, they really look at like the Americans who are, you know, unconditionally supporting them, like, they think you're chumps. Like, that's like, they know exactly what they're doing. Okay, it's like, no, but why would somebody lie? Like, people don't lie. My friends would never lie to me. Like, that's just the attitude that they have. It's like they think you're a chump because it's very clear what they're doing. And when they speak among themselves, it's, again, like, they have whole group chats where they're looking at like murder porn of like Palestinians, and like, you know, they'll look at images of dead children, and it's like a joke to them. Like, this is a truly sick culture. Again, man, it's like, you know, the only innocent Israelis are the minors and children who haven't entered military service. Like, that's truly how deep it goes. Okay? Like, this is a culture that has fully militarized itself, where every able-bodied person in one way or another has military experience, has military training. It's like hello, like, this is Starship Troopers in real life. Like, this is the culture that they've created. It's just like unbelievable. Everything that's just crazy. We're living in a fucking dystopia, man. So right, so this one, at least to read ABC's article here. Israel's assault in Gaza has killed more than 29,000 Palestinians since October 7th. The territory's health ministry said Monday, marking another grim milestone in one of the deadliest and most destructive military campaigns in recent history. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to continue the offensive until, quote, total victory against Hamas after the militants' October 7th attack on Israeli communities. He and the military have said troops will move soon into the southernmost town of Rafah on the Egyptian border, where over half of Gaza's 2.3 million people have sought refuge from fighting elsewhere. Again, like, this tiny patch of land, the very last stretch where there's, again, they said move to a safe zone, and then they attack that safe zone, and then they have to go south again, and then they attack the next safe zone. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. And then people are still saying, no, this isn't ethnic cleansing. It's like, what's going to happen when they're fully pushed out? Is that not ethnic cleansing? Very, very curious that, like, Israel has not established their own humanitarian camps since they're so concerned about civilian casualties. It's like, dude, like, oh my God, I just can't with this. Like, this is truly driving me insane. There's just a complete genocide denial. You know, like, it's so comforting to see those who I'm associated with, not too many, because again, I've already figured out who I can trust and rely on. But, like, I already know the points that they're going to make. And it's like, this is comforting to know, because these are exact same points that were made by German citizens who, they weren't full Nazis, but they didn't turn, they just let things happen because their job was more important than the actual, like, consciousness, Yeah, man. Any sense of justice. Like, there's no sense of justice. It's just like you focus on your job and you support your country, and, like, that's all it is. It's just crazy. Let's see here, continuing. So the United States, Israel's top ally, says it is still working with mediators in Egypt and Qatar to try to broker another ceasefire and hostage release agreement. But those efforts appear to have stalled in recent days, and Netanyahu angered Qatar by calling on it to pressure Hamas and suggesting it funds the militant group. The conflict has also brought near daily exchanges of fire between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah militant group that frequently threatens to escalate. Israeli warplanes on Monday carried out at least 2 strikes near the southern port city of Sidon, and one of the largest attacks near a major city. Lebanese state media said there was no immediate word on casualties. The Israeli military said it attacked Hezbollah armed depots near Sidon in retaliation for a drone that exploded in an open field near the northern Israeli city of Tiberias earlier Monday. In Gaza, the health ministry said the death toll had risen to 29,000 since the start of the war, around 2/3 of them women and children. Again, this is the righteous war self-defense. Majority women and children civilians. More than 69,000 Palestinians have been injured. Overwhelmingly, the territory's hospitals, less than half of which are even partially functioning. Again, remember when they bombed Al-Ahli Hospital and they tried to deny it to say, like, oh no, it was like a misfired rocket. And then, like, we're at this point where it's like, people have already forgotten that because it's just so clear that they're attacking hospitals, and it's just like, it's just crazy, unbelievable. Like, this is so radicalizing, so fucking evil. And, again, like, I don't care, like, because, again, I see a lot of images of Israeli troops also being killed, and it's like, I'm not happy about it. I just don't care, because these guys are fucking barbarians. Like, they're, like you see the attitude on their TikToks, and it's like, they're just dancing in these bombed out schools and hospitals and homes. It's like, okay, like, you're spending more time making a shitpost TikTok than actually, like, having some situational awareness about your surroundings. You're in one of the worst urban warfare situations, since like Stalingrad almost. Like, and then you're trying to make a TikTok, man, fuck you. Like, I don't care if you're getting IED blown off. Like, fuck you. Like, so yeah. So here, continuing the ministry here. The ministry does not distinguish between civilians and combatants in its count. The health ministry is part of the Hamas-run government in Gaza, but maintains detailed records of casualties. Its figures from previous wars in Gaza have largely matched those of UN agencies, independent experts, and Israel's own tallies. Again, they always try to add that caveat. So, yeah, in the title, they didn't say Hamas-run, but they try to be like, well, it's part of the Hamas government. And it's like, yeah, because that's the governing body. I don't view Hamas as a terrorist group. I view it as the state government of Gaza. Like, I view Gaza as a country. So, like, once you start viewing Gaza as a country and understanding what's happening here, it's very clear what's happening. That, like, again, like, imagine any other country controlling another country's ports and their power and the water and the food that can go in, who comes in and out. Like, for any other country, it would be understood that this is an egregious act of occupation. But because people want to turn a blind eye for Palestine, it's like, well, yeah, it's just, yeah, it's just crazy. So, yeah, so that's at least just initial reportings here. Let me read what else here. Yeah, so that's at least, some of the casualty figures that have come out. But again, it just doesn't end there, because Israel, again, Netanyahu wants this war to continue for as long as possible, because he is like at like the end of his political career. If he can keep the country at war and in a crisis, then he can maintain his control and power. And yeah, man, like, this is going to be the undoing of Israel, because they keep escalating this regional confrontation. So now they're talking about Israel and upcoming Ramadan, which is going to be another flashpoint. And Israel is already reporting the restricting of access to the Al-Aqsa Mosque during Ramadan, which again is like one of the holiest of holy sites. So this is like a true, sacrilegious sort of affront to them. And again, for whatever reason, when it comes to Muslims, like, you can just justify all kinds of mistreatment. And of course, if they respond, terrorist, you're a terrorist. It's just, but you can do whatever fucked up shit you want to them, It's just ridiculous. So reading from Al Jazeera. Israel will impose some restrictions on access to Al-Aqsa Mosque in the old city of occupied East Jerusalem during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, according to security needs. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office says, the Al-Aqsa compound, the third holiest site in the world of Muslims, sits atop a hill in the old city. The site is also revered by Jews, who refer to it as the Temple Mount. Restrictions on access to the site have long caused friction, particularly around religious holidays such as Ramadan, which will begin around March 10th this year. Asked about the possibility of blocking access for some worshippers during the holy month, Netanyahu's office said on Monday the Prime Minister made a balanced decision within the security needs determined by professionals. His office gave no further details. Hamas, the Palestinian group that governs the Gaza Strip, denounced the planned restrictions and urged Palestinians to mobilize against them. It describes the restrictions as, quote, a continuation of Zionist criminality and religious warfare led by the extremist settler groups and the terrorist-occupied government against our Palestinian people. So, yeah, it's just further escalation. And again, these Zionist settlers, these extremists, they straight up want to bulldoze the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Like, that's how far they want to take it, which is like, that will definitely explode, the Middle East. Like, it's just, again, like, they're just asking for disaster by doing that. So here, the group called on Palestinians in Israel, the group being Hamas, called on Palestinians in Israel, Jerusalem, and the occupied West Bank to, quote, reject this criminal decision, resist the occupation's arrogance and insolence, and mobilize to stand firm and steadfast in Al-Aqsa Mosque, end quote. Israel often sets rules to limit the number of worshippers at the site, citing security reasons. Israel has previously undertaken violent raids at the site during Ramadan. So that was the sort of escalation. That's literally the whole point of this war to begin with. So there was escalation in 2021. They attacked worshippers, raided them,
that caused a confrontation. And then, of course, they made plans after that confrontation for this October 7th attack, Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, as they call it. So, yeah, this is very much a concerning issue. And again, they're also saying that, like, supposedly the beginning of Ramadan is the plans for the actual invasion of Rafah, to push out the last remaining safe zone. So, yeah, this is just, again, Israel just, like, they're not backing down. Like, they're really playing chicken, and they're really willing to, like, risk everything. For Netanyahu, again, this war is for Netanyahu, okay, in his political career. And he's willing to risk everything for this, because his career is over. Once this war stops, he's out of a job. I don't know, man. It's just like, this is not going to end well. And then, of course, the United States doesn't. Well, okay, because they've been saying that there's some resistance, and they're trying to, like, supposedly say, like, we're trying to balance Israel's response. But it's like, okay, but you're just saying this, but you still give them all the weapons and all the money. It's like, I'm going to give you this really expensive high-tech weaponry, and I want you to use it responsibly. Israel's like, okay, thank you, and then shoots a 5-year-old in the head. And then, of course, America's like, what did I just say? Here, I'm going to give you more weapons so you can stop shooting children. Please shoot Hamas. It's just like, yeah, man, fuck Israel, man. Man, unbelievable. So yeah, so that is the Alaska sort of proposals and that risk of escalation. And just continuing escalations, not just in Gaza, but then also around the world and across the region. It's just crazy to think about the potential for, yeah, man. It's just like we're living in a wild time. And again, there's already the Yemen blockade of the Suez Canal, which is like, this is just like a casual, like, revolution in naval doctrine that nobody wants to talk about. But it's like, what we're experiencing from Yemen is truly, like, groundbreaking breakthrough of warfare. And of course, because the United States Navy is, like, the best Navy in the world, nobody wants to talk about it and bring it up. But truly, like, it just shows that, like, this is a new stage of warfare with drones and missile systems that are more readily available, that can be made cheaply from cheap electronic equipment. That's how advanced it's become. And we have essentially a naval blockade of one of the most vital trade routes. And already they've struck a British cargo ship that's, like, potentially, like, sinking right now. So it's just like, and again, you already saw, like I kind of talked about earlier with the military aid package. Like, they have to rush through this military aid to resupply their SAM systems and other anti-missile, anti-defense systems. Like, dude, like, they're really in for a tough time. They've already had their airstrikes into Yemen, and it hasn't made a dent in their capabilities. And as I said in earlier episodes, the only effective means to prevent, to actually stop Yemen is to send in ground troops and to occupy it. But of course, an invasion of Yemen is going to be a disaster. It's going to be a Vietnam situation. So, dude, like, they're in for a rough ride. Again, like Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, Yemen, Ansar Allah, they are willing to go all the way because they're on their home turf, and this is all they've known. So they don't mind living in the siege because this is all they've known. Meanwhile, these Israelis, they're not going to be able to withstand it. Their country's falling apart. Israel is falling apart. Like, there's, like, real divisions and instability that is going to continue to exacerbate, especially with this, living under constant missile barrages. That's going to do, like, these people are fucking, like, first world, like, cushy yuppies. Like, they don't want to fucking live under missile fire. They're going to get tired of this. So they're just like, they're already leaving. There's, like, a lot of Israelis leaving. So it's just like, this is the beginning of the end. Which, I mean, they brought upon themselves, and they're going to be crying. It's going to be just like every other expat community, Cubans and Venezuelans, and, the pre-revolutionary Persians. And it's just like, they're all just like, oh, the good old days when we used to own everything and used to kill all kinds of people at our own discretion. Like, yeah, man, like, it's just going to be the same diaspora community not even that, because it's like, at least in like Cubans and, well, okay, because a lot of Cubans are like white Spanish people, but like at least they live in those countries. Like Israelis, like they literally colonized it from Europe and America, so they're gonna call themselves a diaspora, but it's like, no, man, like you just, it's just like, no, like no, I'm sorry, it's so silly. Everything's just so stupid. But anyway, just talking at least a little further about Yemen, and recent developments there. So as we follow the developments in Yemen, there's continuous escalations, and you read a story about a ship getting struck, a commercial ship, and of course there are naval ships as well, U.S. Navy, and they even just announced a European coalition. So yeah, I mean, this is certainly escalating, and of course the West is going to get more invested into the operation, because like the Red Sea shipping lanes are incredibly important, because then they're going to go back across Africa, which like around the Cape of Good Hope. Yeah, man, like that's going to be a drain on the economy over time. I mean, again, Israel had like a 20% drop in their GDP, some like metric. I mean, again, like a 20% drop is crazy. Yeah. So just seeing here, reading from BBC, Israel's economy shrinks, and it reads here, their annualized basis dropped by 19%. So yeah, that is crazy, for the fourth quarter of 2023. And of course, yeah, it's just showing that this war is not going to end well for Israel the longer this drags out. And of course, with their economy being hit, it's going to require more aid from the United States. And that's the thing about the aid that we send out. We send it out, but then it's not enough. And then we have to send out a new round and a new round and a new round. And it's just all these emergency bills coming out. Yeah, man, like it's crazy. So, the Yemen operation and what the Ansar Allah, Houthi forces are, implementing is, a revolution in naval warfare, revolution in just, warfare in general. Again, it's kind of shocking to me, like how casual like it's reported in the media, because like this sort of like, again, it's a revolution, okay, in terms of like revolution in military affairs. That's what they call these sort of moments, right? We have like the 20th century where there was a focus on like having a surface fleet, and then there was a revolution with the aircraft carriers. So that became like a defining feature, and that's basically what our current naval doctrine is based around, having these carrier strike groups. Yeah, but now what we're seeing is, these sort of, again, like literal like third world countries, one of the poorest countries in the world. I mean, like, yeah, it's sort of like a Mad Max sort of wasteland. And I don't mean to be, derogatory, but it's, again, like you have like different warlords in these areas. Okay, it's like a failed state, collapsed state that has the naval capabilities with their like, they have like these speedboats and anti-ship systems, anti-missile systems, anti-ship missile systems that are supplied from Iran, and most likely also they're in possession of Chinese, maybe Russian missile systems as well. So again, like, this is sort of a proving ground for this new doctrine of warfare that we're seeing unfold, where you have asymmetric capabilities that can actually challenge, the proper fleet. Because again, like the fleet, the U.S. fleets that we have, the ships, they're being very careful right now. Like, again, like there was a report of like one of the ship defense systems being like that minigun turret. I forget what it's called, but like they had to deploy that, and it's literally like the last line of defense for the ship. So like they're having just trouble, or they're already like dealing with sort of individual attacks happening. So imagine if they were dealing with dozens or hundreds of missiles being launched. That's kind of crazy to think about, and the damage that can be done, because I mean, it's an anti-ship missile. It's crazy to think about. And again, like, so many Americans are like trying to like push us into World War III. We're not really thinking about like we're gonna have some losses on our end as well. Like we keep thinking that we're just gonna just bomb everything to the Stone Age, but it's like we're gonna experience some damage as well. And again, like we don't have the stomach for those losses. We pretend that we do, but we don't. Okay, because like Russia and China, they're willing to take losses to defend their homeland. We're aggressing on their turf. So if we experience heavy casualties outside of the country in offense, it's like people are going to tolerate it, because then people are going to be like, what are we fighting for? And like we're not even fighting to fix our own country, to make our country better. Like that's the thing that these fascists don't think about. These like, you know, it's like we do all this shit around the world, and then we don't even provide a good life for people here, or at least, you know, the focus is like providing a good life for their very select group of people. Meanwhile, like the rest of the modern people, the regular people, have to toil and suffer. Again, infrastructure's collapsing, education systems in the trash. Yeah, man. Like it's just like people can't afford homes. People are, you know, not having kids because they can't afford it. Like it's crazy, and they don't want to do anything to provide a better life. They just want to like just take away your rights to further pressure you into their narrow-minded expectations. So yeah, and again, and it's funny too, because Israel is also a fascist police state, but then they actually have universal health care. Like so like they're a fascist state that actually like is kind of smart, and like they'll provide a good life for their, you know, soldiers and their at least for their in-group class, which like further incentivizes them to continue this system because they're so privileged by it, and that meanwhile stepping down on other people, other groups. Yeah, so who knows, man? I'm just, again, like with Yemen, they already hit a British commercial ship, which is already sunk, you know, abandoned ship with the crew, and this is going to keep happening. And then also there's the idea of the Strait of Hormuz, which isn't that far from Yemen. I mean, Yemen could easily block that off as well and start targeting American and British ships there. Like, this is like, they're in the perfect position to disrupt the entire global economy. And again, this is not some random act of piracy that so many people try to say. This is a legitimate intervention on ongoing genocide. Again, like no serious country is going to put in, you know, sanctions. I mean, who knows? Because like Lula in Brazil, President Lula, he just cut diplomatic ties. And I think possibly more Latin American countries will follow suit, maybe African countries as well. But there's a consideration that the United States is going to pressure them. And then there's the whole, you know, emergence of BRICS, that whole economic sort of coalition forming. I mean, they've added all kinds of powers. So who knows? I mean, if the U.S. tries to pressure countries not to sanction Israel, they might just say, you know what, screw it, we'll just go with BRICS, because like that's now starting to grow, and BRICS might put sanctions on Israel because Russia, China, Russia, Putin, he invited like Hamas officials into Moscow, so who knows what could happen there? Because they're saying now, their stance now is that Palestine must be a state, that there has to be a Palestinian state, you know, its sovereignty respected. But of course, Israel is already saying that they're refusing a state. So it's like the whole two-state solution is now out the window. So even though like they were, like that's the thing, because like Israel's trying to say, well, we tried the two-state solution. It's like, bro, you didn't even accept it to begin with. Again, they shot Yitzhak Rabin, for Zionist extremists shot Yitzhak Rabin for signing on to the Oslo Accords. So that tells you a lot about this current establishment. They don't want to cooperate. They don't want to respect Palestinian sovereignty. They have no interest in it. So it's like, then what else is it? If they're not going to allow Palestinian sovereignty, then how is this not a genocide and ethnic cleansing campaign? It's just like they want their cake and they want to eat it too. You know, it's just like, crazy. Israel's just completely lost it. Yeah, man. Again, like I don't know how you can see what Israel's doing. And again, Israel has been very arrogant. They don't give a shit. they're saying, like, you know, again, you have all kinds of videos of Israeli soldiers making fun of Gaza, vandalizing homes. They're raiding through like their panties, like the panties of women and lingerie. They're stealing all kinds of jewelry and giving it to their girlfriends, and it's just like these guys are fucking savages and barbarians. Like, it's just like it's unbelievable, unbelievable. And of course, we have to pay our respects to Israel. Israel, the brave troops of Israel. It's just crazy. But in a lot of ways, it's sort of a good thing that we have all this access now, that it's so open. And again, like a lot of young people that are on TikTok, we're seeing this. Well, I don't use TikTok, but yeah, like a lot of Gen Z, Gen Alpha, the youths, they're seeing this, and they all they have to see is the racism and the arrogance and just the complete disrespect to understand that. That's all they need to see. They don't even need to be like ideologically prodded to understand the issues of decolonialization, the issues of Zionism. They just need to see this behavior, and they just know right away that these guys are bullies. There's nothing brave about this. It's completely undisciplined, unprofessional. I mean, they're so-called professional soldiers, and that look what they all. That's all they do is just like raid homes and like bust out the windows and just blow everything up. And then you look at the Gaza Hamas videos, and they're actually bringing the fight to the enemy. They're running up to tanks, arming explosives, and not even like a suicide attack. They're just arming explosives and jumping back into a tunnel, poking out with an RPG, taking the shot, running away. They're making sniper videos. Again, I've seen a lot of sniper videos of them taking out officers. Yeah, man, like Israel has experienced heavy casualties. Again, they try not to report on it, but yeah, heavy casualties, heavy equipment losses, which is why they've had to pull out so many forces, which is just going to give Hamas control back. So it's just like, this was entirely a punitive expedition by Israeli forces to go in, kill everybody, destroy everything, make it unlivable, and then pull out. And of course, the Hamas fighters aren't going to leave, and they have every right to stay and fight. That's just, again, like how any other group that we support. If Ukrainians fought to the last man, of course, it would be seen as a heroic last stand, right? But then, of course, Palestinians fighting on their home against an occupying enemy, they're terrorists, and they're kind of like viewed as like drones, right? Like, oh, look, they're throwing their lives away. It's just crazy to think about. Yeah, man. Yeah, so the Yemen, of course, that's just one of the few one of the few braver Arab nations, taking a stand, actually, putting the pressure on Israel where it hurts to stand down to end this conflict. And they've said it already, like, we're going to stop when Israel's occupation of Gaza stops. So, yeah, man, like, they're not afraid of us. Like, again, like so many American, like, military supporters, they're just riding off this high about like the U.S. military, and it's like, yeah, man, the U.S. military is like really good at like bombing third world countries and killing a lot of civilians. Yeah, absolutely, but we haven't had a proper force on force confrontation between a conventional force. Like the closest that I can think of, and I was like, so on YouTube, there's some videos you can find, some movies of Chinese movies. There was the video of the movie The Battle of Lake Changjiang, I hope I'm saying that right, which is depicting of the Korean War and the Chinese intervention there. Of course, very obvious Chinese propaganda, so I knew that going in, but like there's just moments where I'm like saluting the screen. I'm like, yes, Chairman Mao. Like I'm just having fun with it. Yeah, but yeah, like the Korean conflict for the American forces and the Chinese intervention, that was a real challenge for U.S. and it was supposed to be a UN expedition. Yeah, I mean, like, again, they're like in this freezing mountain and, being surrounded by the enemy. Really intense conflict, yeah. So that's really the most that I can think of in like the post World War II era. Yeah, man. Like, otherwise, like every other country we've been up against, like maybe even after that, because of course we're up against like the guerrilla forces in Vietnam. Like the only other conventional force you can think of is Saddam Hussein's army, which was just like immediately destroyed by the Air Force. So like, yeah, like the U.S. forces are effective, but they're always stepping on weaker enemies. But of course, when it comes to like Russia or say like the Warsaw Pact, they're like, yeah. And I was actually reading on when I was studying the concept of revolutionary military affairs, or RMA, they pointed specifically to this whole doctrine that's around NATO sort of doctrine that is centered around surveillance and reconnaissance technologies that can pinpoint positions of enemy armor, because that was the Soviet doctrine, was just these heavy armor columns. So that's why we have now all these like advanced drones and like sort of spy planes and stealth bombers. It's essentially so we can avoid detection from the Soviet forces, and of course they have a very effective air force as well. And again, the stealth capabilities to detect the enemy armor columns, attack with heavy ordnance, precision guided ordnance. Again, that's another factor that we have. But of course, after the Soviet Union collapsed, we had no, like, that was it. Like, okay, well, the Soviet Union has collapsed. It's sort of, again, it's really just like really shameful that they didn't disband NATO after that. They just went and focused their attention on Russia, even though Russia now is supposed to be a capitalist country. And they wanted to be, they wanted to be friendly with the West. That's the whole reason they overthrew the Soviet Union. They're like, okay, we're a liberal capitalist democracy like you. Can we normalize relations? And then there's the Desert Shield operations, the Persian Gulf operations, and then also the intervention in the Yugoslav wars, the bombing of Kosovo. So again, we're just like striking on like second-rate military powers, or third-rate, just straight up third world countries. That's been sort of the post-Soviet military doctrine that we've had. And then, of course, there's the 9/11, global war on terror that has been raging for, the last, 20 plus years. And we're just going back to attacking guerrilla forces, and look how that's paid off. Like, Afghanistan has collapsed and is in the control of the Taliban. Iraq, of course, it's like a puppet government, but they hate us. They want us out. The militia forces there that are largely supported by Iran, who fought ISIS, they hate us, and now they're attacking us. Again, there's also been like attacks by, of course, there were service members that were killed in Jordan, or it's like the Jordan-Syria border, because that's sort of like a no man's land, and we just happen to have troops in Syria. Like, again, that's just like the simple fact that the media doesn't raise that as a concern of like, is this a legitimate military operation? Like, it's just like, it's sort of matter of factly like, yes, we have troops in Syria, and there's nothing else we can do about that. Like, it's just crazy. And again, we're seeing, again, bases in Iraq and Syria and Jordan being targeted by these militia, and it's going to continue, again, because the war, or the genocide in Gaza, and the U.S. is just going to keep bombing. They're going to keep bombing, and they're going to continue to make their strikes. I mean, they recently made strikes against Iranian, like just directly Iranian Republican Guard members in Syria and in Iraq, just making waves of attacks. It's just like, it's not even, you can't even call it a Cold War. It's just a straight up war. Like, that's what's happening. But we're not actually attacking Iran proper yet. I mean, Israel would really love us to bomb Iran, but we're not getting to that point yet. And again, if that happens, if there is a direct confrontation with Iran, then they're gonna basically unleash all their missiles, as well as Yemen. They're gonna unleash all their missiles, all the Hezbollah as well. All their missiles are gonna unleash. Like this is like a recipe for disaster. Like, it's gonna get hot really quick, and there's gonna be all these missiles launched at once, and the missile systems might take out plenty of them, but it's going to be overwhelmed. Again, the Iron Dome system has already been malfunctioning, and of course they require constant supply, which, like, that the question of whether or not we can keep that up, that's we don't know what's going to happen there. So, dude, like, again, we're just playing with fire. The U.S. military, the U.S. empire has spent all these decades expanding and consolidating control around the world. And now the U.S. is weak. We're on the back foot. And all these other regional powers and players, they're stepping up and asserting their dominion and sovereignty. So, if everything happens all at once, like, who knows what the U.S. military can do? Because again, like, this isn't the only place. I mean, the Middle East is the only region where the U.S. military establishment is being challenged. I mean, again, there was the Niger coup that occurred, where there was the ECOWAS intervention or coalition that was trying to be formed up. And then, of course, Burkina Faso and Mali, they offered their support to Niger. So that was a bit of a standoff, and it's kind of going away. And then just also recently, which I haven't really reported on, there was Venezuela. Venezuela was trying to make some territorial sort of claims. Again, I literally never heard of this before. I was sort of like, because I don't think like Maduro is like the worst like world leader. Like, there's so many Venezuelan like expats that I know that like they just hate Chavez and they hate Maduro, and I'm just like, they're not terrible people. Like, they're not. They're not the best. I'm not saying they're saints or anything, but it's like they treat them like Stalin, and it's like they're not as bad. Not that even Stalin's bad, but yeah, it's just so. But again, like they were making claims in Guyana, which had to do with oil and gas explorations, and that caused a bit of a standoff, which I think has sort of died down. Again, whenever these sort of conflicts or like confrontations occur, especially on Twitter, you see a lot of like, especially like NATO supporters. They're just looking for any excuse for the United States to get involved and start bombing people. They're like, fuck yeah, let's go teach them a lesson. Like, it's crazy to think about. And that sort of died down. And I guess Guyana and Venezuela they've made their own agreements on how to settle this, but still, like there was a British ship deployed as well. And you have the Southern Command. They certainly were making their preparations. I'm sure. Yeah, man, it's crazy. I mean, again, like there's all these different points, and then of course there's like China and Taiwan. And I read somewhere that like there were some special forces like deployed to some islands claimed by Taiwan, which are like, it's just crazy to think about. Like, you have an island claimed by Taiwan that's like right on the border of China, like just like not even like again, like it's just like a thin stretch of water, and then it's China and Taiwan, and it's like, you don't consider this a massive provocation? Like, this is crazy. But then watch, if Russia or China deployed troops in Mexico, dude, like, are you kidding me? It would just be World War III immediately. Like, they would invade Mexico right away. Like, it's just, yeah, man, it's just crazy to think about. Crazy to think about what's the double standards that are at play. And of course, you have Americans who unironically just believe that the U.S. should be controlled. Like, we don't have to play by any rules. It's the rules that we play. It's just like we're number one, and we have to own everything, instead of like actually living democratically under international rule of law. Yeah, man, it's just crazy. Again, that's why they when they're again on Twitter talking about like, because again there was like the Starship Trooper discourse, which was so stupid. Okay, because like it couldn't be more obvious. They're saying like, again, it's like, oh well, it's not good satire because everybody's good looking, and I think this is an appealing society. It's just like it gets to a point where, yeah, like people are going to like just start thinking like, yeah, no, this is perfectly fine. Having a system that requires military service to guarantee your rights. Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, it's just like crazy what's happening. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the Israel-Gaza sort of conflict, and also Yemen's intervention as well, and the effects on the economy, not just Israel's economy, but the global economy, and also just in general, the U.S. military establishment and our sort of uneasiness in our position. Again, like our imperial control is on the decline, but it's on the back foot, and this is sort of a dangerous time, because whenever an empire is on the decline like this, they act erratically and they get involved in these military adventures which end up in disaster, as we could possibly see in Yemen and the Red Sea. Again, because the only effective means to assert control is a direct invasion of the Yemen territories, an occupation of those sites, to take out those sites, the missile sites, and just the population in general. But that's going to be a disaster. I mean, like, it's just again, Israel doesn't look good for Israel's future. And again, this is what they've created for themselves. So again, I have no sympathy for their eventual collapse. Like, it's just, I mean, this is what you created, So anyway, so that's the Gaza-Israel genocide that's occurring, and then the regional conflict that is continuing to escalate and could possibly escalate further, especially not with Ramadan coming up. So that's going to be a very dangerous situation. I mean, this summer is going to be bad. Like, just to see how further the famine is going to be in the other conflicts that are most definitely going to explode now, because like Israel is just digging their grave. And yeah, man, it's just crazy to think about what could happen further. So sad. And again, the U.S. is just going to continue to support it, and we're going to keep funneling aid, and our country is going to keep falling apart. And of course, no serious politician is going to come out and say we need to de-escalate and we need to stop these wars. Like, again, like, this is like our Vietnam, what's happening. I mean, seriously, this is like a Vietnam situation. Again, I try to have like moments where I'm like, if I was living in a certain time, how would I think? What would I say? So, the 60s I think very deeply on, because it's such a, radical moment in history, in our culture and politics. And of course, supporting the civil rights, that was not a popular position. Being anti-war, that was not a popular position. Like, entire families like fell apart over these topics. Like, just for even just saying, hey, like, let's hear this out. Like, entire families, relationships sort of disintegrated over debates that we're having now today. So it's just like, I have to remain consistent. If I can look in hindsight and see that position being justified, then I have to apply it to today. And that requires a level of bravery and courage, like intellectual bravery and courage. So yeah, man, I have no reservations for the things that I say and the support for these controversial positions, because again, it's just like, I see what's happening, and it's just like, I can't, again, like, there's only so many like times you could see like, people being harmed and starved, and then be told like, no, actually they deserve this. Like, it's just crazy to think about, crazy. So yeah, I mean, that's the uphill battle that we have to fight as leftists. Thankfully, at least, more young people are seeing this. And again, like, this sort of like support is a generational divide. Because I have seen, it's interesting, like, I've followed some of my, I wouldn't even call them friends, but just acquaintances who aren't political at all. Like, they're at the very least like centrist, milquetoast liberals, like, that just, it's all really aesthetic. But they see the things that are happening, and they're even like, supporting charities, or at least talking about a ceasefire. So like, that's inspiring to see, at least, that people are sort of changing on it. But like, they're taking that position of like, well, I still think Hamas is bad. I still think these terrorists, they need to be eliminated. So it's like, they want the relief and the aid to the civilians because they recognize the atrocities that are committed, but it's from the position of like, well, Hamas is creating this. So they're not taking the step further of recognizing Israel as being the problem, this racist police state, the occupation that has existed for decades. And then that's where I have to come in to educate that history. Well, I myself and other leftists have to come in and educate that history and educate why, it's just like, why, do I take such a radical position? I mean, again, it's just like, I don't say these things lightly. Like, it's something that I truly believe in. But yeah. So with that being said, on the escalating conflict in the Middle East, I do want to bring attention to some other developments in Ukraine. There have been significant developments on the front lines, mainly being the collapse of Avdiivka. Yeah, man, that was sort of a stronghold that it had been a stronghold for, since like the beginnings of the Donbass conflict, so from 2014. So, this is sort of like symbolic of the general decline of the Ukrainian war effort. And, just reading some initial reports about the rout. I mean, it was a serious rout that they had, and some troops were left behind. So it was just a complete collapse of the defenses, and then also in the military brass, Zaluzhny had been sacked, and I spoke about Zaluzhny in the last episode about proposed operations that were meant to break through the Zaporizhzhia front early in the war, which they were trying to frame as. In the article was the Wall Street Journal. They were trying to frame it as sort of missed opportunity because they waited too long, and then of course the counteroffensive that they had in the summer, it failed because they waited too long to do it, and it's just like they would have failed then as well. So yeah, just in general, the Ukrainian efforts are not in a good position. Yeah, it's just a general decline that's occurring in the war effort. The front lines are collapsing. Again, like Russia's making gains everywhere, and we're going to have a Bakhmut or Avdiivka situation now in these continued domestic areas. And my theory is that Russia is going to dedicate towards a true target, and I believe Zaporizhzhia might be a target that they're going to move towards, because these other cities that they've taken were smaller urban centers, but Zaporizhzhia is actually a true metropolitan city, and I think Russia is going to attempt to bog down the Ukrainian military in a vital area. Zaporizhzhia is like right on the river, so it's an incredibly important city. And again, I'm no military strategist, but this is just my thinking, is that they are going to force Ukraine to get bogged down in these important urban centers, which is going to force them to shuffle around troops on the front line, and then they make these small gains with these. It's kind of interesting what they got, because it's sort of like stormtroopers. Like they have like heavy, Spetsnaz units, probing different points of the line, and if they can make a breakthrough, they just flood troops in there. So that's sort of, again, it's like World War One, like these sort of tactics that are breaking out now. So that's sort of what they did with Avdiivka. They forced a lot of reserves and brigades to redeploy, and then that opened up different points of the front lines, and then that's where they can make slow inch-by-inch gains. Meanwhile, they force Ukraine to defend this major city, but then, of course, they run the risk of getting encircled in those cities, and then they have to pull out and then reposition, and it's just like, yeah, so, I mean, it's not good. And of course, the United States is sort of being blamed because like they're not sending enough aid, and it's like we've been sending billions and billions of dollars of aid, and the war effort isn't doing any better. But we just gotta keep sending them more weapons and more money, and more of their men are going to keep dying, and Russia's going to keep making big gains and taking city by city. So it's just crazy to think about and crazy to watch unfold. I mean, again, this is sort of like the hubris of Ukraine, that they could have had an agreement, they could have ceded some territory, they could have ceded Crimea and Donbass, bite the bullet. It sucks, but yeah, I mean, they couldn't stop the inevitable. So as we dissect the different aid packages that are being proposed and that basically being pressured to be pushed out, we'll dive a little deeper, at least because I went over that proposed bill, the different, the $66 billion, which is not just for Ukraine, but also for Israel and Taiwan. But I wanted to at least focus specifically on the Ukraine aid packages. And of course, like there's this talk about this recent collapse of Avdiivka and how that could have been prevented. People are trying to place, the blame somewhere. So a lot of the blame is being placed on the United States and basically NATO for not pushing out aid, even though we have pushed out billions and billions of dollars of aid. So I'll at least read here from ABC News. So they're saying here, stalled U.S. aid for Ukraine underscores GOP's shift away from confronting Russia. So I think this is like sort of a strategy that a lot of liberals are trying to do, where they're trying to place the blame on Republicans and saying like, oh, well, Republicans, they don't want to stand up to Russia. Like it's kind of crazy to see how hawkish liberals have become. The Democratic establishment has become. Like, either party wants a war, so the Democrats want a war with Russia, and the Republicans want a war with China, and to an extent, well, not to an extent, really. I mean, they're saying openly a war with Iran and even Mexico. So it's just like, I guess they just don't want war with other white people. Yeah, so, yeah, let's at least read here from ABC News. So at about 2 a.m. last Tuesday, Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin stood on the Senate floor and explained why he opposed sending more aid to help Ukraine fend off the invasion launched in 2022 by Russian President Vladimir Putin. Quote, "I don't like this reality," Johnson said. Quote, "Vladimir Putin is an evil war criminal," but he quickly added, "Vladimir Putin will not lose this war." That argument, that the Russian president cannot be stopped, so there's no point in using American taxpayer dollars against him, marks a new stage in the Republican Party's growing acceptance of Russian expansionism in the age of Donald Trump. So that's just kind of just crazy, like the sentiment that's being said now. Like, they're trying to present Republicans as being weak because they're comfortable with Russian expansionism, and so we see us Democrats, we are willing to uphold NATO and American imperialism. Like, it's just crazy to see like this like sort of manufacturing of consent. So again, continuing, the GOP has been softening its stance on Russia ever since Trump won the 2016 election following the Russian hacking of its Democratic opponents. There are several reasons for this shift. Among them, Putin is holding himself out as an international champion of conservative Christian values, and the GOP is growing increasingly skeptical of overseas entanglements. Then there's Trump's personal embrace of the Russian leader. So it's kind of crazy. Like, they're trying to say, like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like, these, I'm not saying that, like, Russia didn't attempt some astroturfing and that they didn't attempt some hacking. But again, they're really still hung up on the whole, oh, well, you see, Putin manufactured the election and made Hillary lose. It's just like, no, man, like, Americans wanted Trump. Like, that's what happened. Like, or at least it was the Electoral College. I guess, there's like one of the few instances where people are like, maybe we shouldn't have this. Yeah, man. Let me at least look over the election again. So 2016 election. What's the popular vote count? I'm trying to see here. Okay. So yeah, so in the 2016 presidential election, although Trump did win the electoral vote of 304 votes, Clinton had the Electoral College of 227. But on the popular front, the popular vote, Clinton won out over 3 million. So she had 65 million and Trump had 62 million. So, yeah, I mean, of course, in that sense, like, this is like one of the only instances where you saw Democrats like actually questioning the Electoral College, but it was only for their own benefit. Like, they don't want the Electoral College gone on principle. It's just like on this one specific instance where it didn't suit them. So, anyway, but yeah, they're still hung up on this. I mean, the idea that, I don't know. It's just like, again, they can't accept the idea that, like, Trump did win, and he did win through the system that we've created, unfortunately. Anyway, so, I mean, they're still hung up on this. It's kind of crazy. And then I guess they're still trying to, like, set up for this upcoming election where Biden very likely will lose. And then, oh, well, you see, he hacked us again. Russia hacked us. It's going to be crazy. I mean, there's some crazy conspiracy theories that have been coming out from the Democratic establishment, like from Nancy Pelosi. Like, she's still hung up on this shit. Like, she is like, dude, like, she has all kinds of weird theories. I mean, they're all boomers, so it's like they all believe weird things. So yeah, so then again, so continuing. Yeah, so they're saying Putin represents Christian values, conservative Christian values. He's anti-woke. That's why they love him. So that's the paradigm that, like, conservatives are seeing the world now. It's woke and unwoke. It's just crazy. Yeah. So here,
Yeah, so now the GOP's ambivalence on Russia has stalled additional aid to Ukraine at a pivotal moment in the war. The Senate last week passed a foreign aid package that included $61 billion for Ukraine on a 70-29 vote, but Johnson was one of a majority of the Republicans to vote against the bill after their late-night stand to block it. In the Republican-controlled House, Speaker Mike Johnson said his chamber will not be, quote, rushed to pass the measure, even as Ukraine's military warns of dire shortages of ammunition and artillery. Many Republicans are openly frustrated that their colleagues don't see the benefits of helping Ukraine. Putin and his allies have banked on democracies worrying of aiding Kiev, and Putin's GOP critics warn that NATO countries in Eastern Europe could become targets of an emboldened Russia that believes the U.S. won't counter it. Quote, Putin is losing, Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina said on the floor before Johnson's speech, quote, this is not a stalemate. Again, like, Avdiivka literally has just, collapsed. So it's like they're saying he's losing and he's making a significant gain, and they're making gains all over the front. So there's a very much a disconnect in like what our governments are saying. So Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky was one of 22 Republican senators to back the package, while 26 opposed it. The divide within the party was on a stark display Friday, with the prison death of Russian opposition figure and anti-corruption advocate Alexei Navalny, which President Joe Biden and other world leaders blamed on Putin. Trump notably stood aside from that chorus Monday in his first public comments on the matter that referred to Navalny by name. Offering no sympathy or attempt to fix blame, Trump posted on Truth Social that the, quote, sudden death of Alexei Navalny has made me more and more aware of what is happening in our country. It is a slow, steady progression with crooked, all caps crooked, radical left politicians, prosecutors, and judges leading us down a path to destruction, end quote. So that's his point. And again, you're going to see this a lot. They're going to get really hung up on Navalny, and I'll talk about him later, but it's just like they're getting hung up on this guy. And of course, like Navalny, there have been recent revelations of his stances on Islam and such, like just truly like ultra-nationalist racist sentiments. So it's just very interesting. Like whenever there's an opposition figure in a country that's like anti, America, or not even anti-America, just like trying to assert its sovereignty, it's usually somebody who's super right-wing, but it doesn't matter to them how right-wing they are, so long as they're willing to submit the country to multinational corporate rule. So it's like, I mean, look at Ukraine. I mean, they were willing to support literal Nazis, so look what they were able to do in Russia. So here, Nikki Haley, continuing, again, another Republican primary rival who is somehow still in the race, even though she's not going to make it. So Nikki Haley, his Republican presidential primary rival, said Monday that Trump is, quote, siding with a thug in his embrace of Putin. Tillis responded to Navalny's death by saying in a post, quote, history will not be kind to those in America who make apologies for Putin and praise Russian autocracy, end quote. Johnson, the House Speaker, issued a statement calling Putin, quote, a vicious dictator, and pledging that he, quote, will be met with united opposition, but he did not offer any forward for passing the aid to Ukraine. So, yeah, there are divisions. And again, it's usually interesting that Republicans, in this instance, they're just most likely, it could be that aspect of their sympathies of his so-called anti-woke statements or beliefs. Putin doesn't believe in that woke bullshit. Like he's not into that culture war stuff. He just knows that can rile up some sympathies and the guy's a gangster. I mean, he's a KGB agent, so it's like he knows. Like, he knows how to swindle these guys. He's like, okay, yeah, let's just, let's create a crisis of, like, traditional values and then create an authoritarian state around that. I mean, yeah, Russia has been clamping down on LGBTQ issues. So, but then again, like, it's always been like that. Like, the Soviet Union was, like, truly, like, the most progressive time for Russia. And that says a lot. Like,
So, to see this progression, yeah, there's like this meme where it's like, I don't like post-Soviet Russia. And it's like, well, why did you ask for it? Like, this is what was going to happen. Like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, it's so crazy how, like, some people still celebrate, like, the collapse of the Soviet Union. But it's like, what happened to Russia afterward was horrible. Like, it's insane. And then, of course, this gives rise to a figure like Putin, an autocrat. So, yeah, man, it's just crazy to think about. And then, of course, it's not even... really, the issue that they have with Putin isn't even his like autocracy. It's just the fact that he has national sovereignty. Like, he doesn't want Russia to be... I mean, Russia never, ever has accepted foreign subjugation. So it's just... Yeah, man, it's just crazy to think about. It's not enough that the Soviet Union collapses and Russia becomes a capitalist, so-called, liberal... Not even liberal, but just like at least a capitalist state. Like, it's not enough for that. Like, they have to be completely subservient and vassalized the same way that like France and Germany is, the UK. That's what they want to turn Russia into. And of course, Russia's not going to accept that. So that's really where the friction starts. Yeah, man. So that's at least the packages and like sort of divisions between the GOP. And of course, the framing of like liberal Democrats that like, oh, well, you see Russia or the Republicans are more sympathetic because they have similar values and they help Trump. That's just like, it's just so weird seeing things unfold. It's just so weird to watch this. Like, I don't even pay attention anymore. So yeah, so that's at least the aid, Senate bills that they're debating on. Here at least I want to talk about, of course, because they're saying that like Putin's losing and that, oh, that he's losing and, he's on his legs, but it's like, they just captured Avdiivka, which has been a stronghold for like the last decade now. Yeah, and it was a pretty significant rout. So this was what I will at least highlight on. So here, reading from AP News. So they're saying, and this is as of the 19th. So yeah, in the last, of course it was yesterday as I'm recording it. And actually I had to like do 2 separate recordings because it's just better that way. And they're doing like a lot of renovations and like construction. So it's like, I really try to record in like quiet moments, but I can't control what my neighbors do or what these construction guys do. So at least I have some calm for now. But yeah, this has been like multiple days of recording. So yeah, this collapse of Avdiivka, which is now under Russian control, it's a pretty significant development and certainly a sign for things to come. So at least I'll read from AP News. So Russian forces have completed their takeover of Avdiivka by eliminating the last pocket of resistance at the eastern Ukraine city's huge coke plant. The Russian military said Monday, after the sheer weight of its troop numbers and greater air and artillery firepower drove out Kiev's forces. Moscow officials announced Saturday that they had taken control of Avdiivka. Ukrainian forces confirmed pulling out of the bombed-out city and what amounted to a triumph for the Kremlin, even though the 4-month battle was costly. The victory was a morale boost for Russia, days ahead of the 2-year anniversary of its full-scale invasion of its neighbor on February 24th, 2022. So, yeah, 2 years out, things are not going well for Ukraine. There's issues with supplying Western aid and mobilizing troops. They're stretched thin. It's kind of crazy to think about, like, that they have this front line all the way in eastern Ukraine, and they haven't really... I'm guessing it's just better for Russia that way to maintain one front than attacking from all directions. So who knows if eventually they'll plan further invasions again, as they attempted in the initial invasion. So who knows if they're going to expand on other fronts along the Russia-Ukraine border. Right, so 2 years out, from February 24th. So here, reading further from AP, for Ukraine, the rout was a bleak reminder of its reliance on the supply of Western weapons and ammunition, as holdups in the delivery of expected aid have left it short of provisions and handicapped in the fight. Russia is likely to keep pressing its advantage, sensing that Ukraine is weakened. It battered Avdiivka with scores of glide bombs and relentless shelling in recent days, leaving the defenders with no place to hide, according to a senior Ukrainian officer involved in the battle. And it's just reading a little further. So here, some Western military analysts believe that Ukraine could counter Russia's attempt
to build up on its Avdiivka success by trying to erect new defense lines in that immediate area and deploying fresh units to hold back Kremlin's forces. Even so, the threat of ammunition shortages hangs over the Ukraine's military, with Russia aiming to exploit the moment as the United States struggles to get political agreement for more aid and Europe strives to increase production. So they're really hinging on this support from the United States, and then of course there's a bargaining happening, which includes the border wall as well. So there's that sort of connection. Like there's just a lot of political bargaining happening, and men are dying. But it's like they want the war to continue, but they also want to bargain on like the aid packages, and then we're going to send them $61 billion or whatever billion package, and then a couple months from now they're going to say again, we need more aid. It's just, and then on top of that, we also have to support Israel and their further escalations, and as their economy continues to fall, this is just does not bode well, and this is what our tax dollars are paying for. Yeah, man. Great times we're living in. So yeah, let's see here. Yeah, so they're just reading on the proposed package. So the proposed $61 billion U.S. aid package for Ukraine is seen as crucial for a Ukrainian victory. Without U.S. funding, Ukraine is likely to start losing the war, analysts say. Yeah, now they're starting to lose. It's just like crazy to think. Quote, delays in Western security assistance to Ukraine are likely to help Russia launch opportunistic offensive operations along several sectors of the front line in order to place pressure on Ukrainian forces along multiple axes, end quote, the Institute for the Study of War said in the assessment last Sunday. Apart from Avdiivka, Russia is pushing harder in the northeastern Kharkiv region and in southern Zaporizhzhia, the Washington-based think tank said. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky said his country is, quote, doing everything possible and impossible, end quote, to defeat Russia. Quote, Ukrainians have fought heroically before, but for the first time in its history, Ukraine has achieved such global solidarity and support, end quote, Zelensky said in his daily video address on Sunday evening. So yeah, but that's sort of the packages that are being debated and of course bargained with, and they're saying, oh, we got to do this now because he could lose, and yeah, so it's crazy to think about, and yeah, as I said, the route from Avdiivka was pretty messy. There were some troops left behind. There have been reports of captured and executed prisoners and wounded. They had to leave some wounded as well. So, I mean, it's a war. It's messy. This sort of thing. We try to treat war this day and age as being all high tech and being all clean and fancy. It's dirty. It's brutal. It's sad. I mean, some of the videos that are coming out of Ukraine, it's just crazy to think about that. I've read some of the casualty reports, and there's some young guys dying, like 20, 18-year-old guys. And it's just like, it's crazy now that I'm getting to that stage where I'm like, dude, this is literally a child being like sent to the front lines. Like, that is crazy. I'm just like, wow. Like when I think about war, like I'm not opposed to, and again, I'm a very out of shape guy. So I me talking about war is just like, what the fuck am I going to do? But it's like, there are moments where like, yeah, you have to stand and fight. And from the Ukrainian perspective, I can see why they want to fight, that they want to defend their homeland. But it's like, this has been like 8 years now of the Donbass, Crimea conflict, which they couldn't win. Like that would, they couldn't do anything. And it's just like, you had so much time to make an agreement. But it's like they just wanted that land back because of the principle of the matter, even though those Russian ethnic groups living there didn't want to live under this, like, because, there's the Euromaidan, which was essentially, of course, they try to frame it as a revolution, but it's, of course, a right-wing coup in a lot of ways, which the U.S. supported. So that's really what happened there. And, of course, Crimea has a very important Russian naval base, so it's just like, when you learn those details about it, it's sort of like, listen, man, like the U.S. would invade countries for less, okay? So at least there's like real strategic reasons and also ethnic cultural reasons for Russia's actions. It's just, I don't like what they did, but it's like to act as though this is completely random, without any reason, because they try to act like Putin is like
an irrational actor. He's like no. Well, I mean, he's getting old, so there's a certain point where like your age gets to you. But again, like Putin, again, like you gotta take him seriously. Like, this guy knows what he's doing. I'm not saying he's good, but to act as though he isn't smart, that's very dangerous. So, reading here, because there was some recent, and this is sort of linked to the earlier comments about conservatives, appealing to Putin and his sort of anti-woke image that he's sort of forming. There was the recent interview from Tucker Carlson with Putin, which I'm not saying that Tucker Carlson is anybody legitimate to follow. Certainly not a journalist. Calling him a journalist is being very charitable. So, but when you have the opportunity to interview Putin, it's like, okay, like that's a pretty important thing to interview the president of Russia, who is currently waging a war. Yeah, it's just like how else are you going to know his beliefs and his reasonings, even if you don't believe it. If you might not agree with it, you might not believe it, but at the very least, you can just hear what he's willing to say. That's a unique opportunity. So, I will say that this interview has been pretty enlightening, and I guess a very much important thing to pay attention to if you want to learn about this character profile, if you could say, of Putin. Even though like he's most likely presenting an image, like he's very clearly playing Tucker. Like, it's just so funny to hear some of the things. It's just like, he's clowning on him. He's like, well, isn't it a good thing that the CIA didn't accept you? He's just like straight up to his face. Like, it's actually pretty funny because Putin clearly doesn't respect Tucker. Why would he? He's the fucking like world's like strongest gangster, right? Yeah. So reading from Reuters, at least, some certain comments about the Vladimir Putin interview and, my assessment on it. So we're reading at least from Reuters. So Russian President Vladimir Putin says he was surprised by a lack of sharp questions from U.S. television host Tucker Carlson in an interview that made headlines around the world last week. Putin told a Russian TV interviewer, Pavel Zarubin, that he had wanted Tucker Carlson to behave more aggressively, which would have given him the right to reply just as pointedly. Quote, "To be honest, I thought he would behave aggressively and ask so-called sharp questions. I was not prepared for this. I wanted it because it would have given me the opportunity to respond in the same way." End quote. Putin said in comments broadcasted on Wednesday. In his first interview with an American journalist since before Russia's invasion of Ukraine nearly 2 years ago, Putin subjected Tucker Carlson to a half-hour lecture on history. He told Zarubin he was surprised that Carlson had not interrupted him more. Frankly, I did not get full satisfaction from this interview, Putin said. The Kremlin said Putin had agreed to the Carlson interview because the approach of the former Fox News host differed from the one-sided reporting of the Ukraine conflict by many Western news outlets. So he's pretty much just saying, like, man, I wanted him to hit harder, But it is interesting because, like, they're trying to, like, you can hear the line again where it's like, let me see here. Yeah, Putin subjected Carlson to a half-hour lecture on history. And there's a lot of outlets that try to, like, frame that whole, like, sort of historical, I mean, you could say a lesson or just historical explanation from Putin. They try to treat it as, like, oh, it's just, like, ultra-nationalist conspiracies and this and that. But it's like, if you want to learn the reasons for Russia's historical claims to the region, why wouldn't you want to learn about the Kievan Rus? Like, that's very important and very relevant to the region. Again, these are the same people. They talk about, Putin, he's talking about the Rus. But then when it comes to Israel, they look at these like white, Polish, and like European American Jews, and it's like, clearly they're indigenous. So yeah, it's just kind of crazy. But I mean, I do like the memes that came out of it. It's just like, what? Can you explain why Russia has a claim? Well, let's see. In 3000 BC, Indo-Europeans, it's just like, even though he went that deep into history, it's like, it's nothing like crazy. A lot of it is legend, of course, but it would be crazy because the things that he said weren't crazy. It would be crazy if he said something about like Hyperborea or some other like crazy, like ultra nationalist, like utopian ancient civilization theories, that would be crazy. So, yeah. And, I try to look into it too. Like, I try to look at like the earliest mentions of Ukraine, and what I can only really find of it, and this is something Putin even said himself, was that the mentions of Ukraine were more of a geographic sort of label and not really like an linguistic identity that came sort of later. So it's more like there were Russians living in that region, and then over time they separated because, of course, there's also the Belarus. So, I mean, that's typically what happens. There were the Rus, and over time, and also just geographic displacement, they form their own culture, So, I mean, again, like a lot of the Ukrainians try to just completely like separate themselves from Russia. Like, no, like, it's almost like they want to remove that from their DNA. But it's like the connections to Russia and the Rus is undeniable. That is the history. They want to be more European because Russian is seen as more like Asiatic and exotic. It's just, I mean, that's sort of, they don't say that out loud, but that's like a lot of the sentiments that come in behind Russophobia. Again, like, it's kind of crazy to think about like a lot of the responses, not just like Russia as like the state and, its current like actions, but like Russian culture and Russian identity. That is a strain that is a bit concerning, especially not just in Ukraine, but in other Baltic countries and places like Finland, where there's reports of like them having like language tests to like test the citizenship of ethnic Russians living in these former Soviet countries. Like, it's crazy to think about like some 80-year-old babushka having to worry about getting deported because a country that her grandparents came from is doing bad things. Like, it's crazy to think about. Like, it's really messed up, Like, it would be like if we went to World War II and like they banned Beethoven and Mozart, that sort of thing. Like, that is crazy. Just because Germany does something bad doesn't mean we have to like completely destroy like German. I mean, that's what technically happened in World War I, right? Like, there was a huge German identity in the country, and then World War I came through, and many of those Germans tried to separate from that identity and that culture. So it's, it's very unfortunate, actually, And I live in Texas. There's a very unique German, culture. I mean, there's a whole dialect of German, Texas German, that is sort of dying out now. You can go to some towns that very much hold that German cultural architecture. It's really cool. It's like, damn, like there's some real fucking culture here for once. Damn, like it's yeah. But man, it's unfortunate any culture or any ethnic identity facing discrimination because their homeland that they most likely haven't even visited is doing shitty things. That's a terrible thing. So, Russophobic discrimination is not good. And of course, Putin is sort of drawing on this history of like Russian culture and identity. Of course, it is a bit silly that he would delve into such history. But then again, when you ask the leader of Russia, hey, what historical claims does Russia have to Ukraine? Don't be surprised if he gives you a full historical explanation deep into history. Well, not even that deep. It's like over 1,000 years ago. So, that's sort of the time scale difference that we have because we're such a new country. But then you have a country like Russia that is very ancient. It's an ancient civilization. So, of course, they're going to draw inspiration from there. Same thing with China, right? China is an ancient civilization. So they pull from that pride, that heritage. Yeah, the world's a very ancient place. And, of course, we're a settler colony. So we can only go so far. And then sometimes we might pull inspiration from, mainly the British, right? The Anglo-Saxon cultures. But again, the Anglo-Saxon identity doesn't really even hold that much in our own country. This is a very diverse country, so there's so many inspirations to pull from. But that's the Putin Tucker Carlson interview. I mean, I didn't fully watch it, but again, it's a pretty important interview. I mean, again, there's not many outlets, that you're going to see an American commentator or journalist. Again, this is Tucker Carlson, so I don't want to call him that. But yeah, there's not many opportunities where you're going to see him, an American, speaking with the president of Russia in this manner. And he's sort of like just saying like, man, I wish you would have done more to ask tougher questions. I mean, again, like there's so many moments where Putin is like, I thought we're having a serious discussion here. Like it's just, I understand if I'm boring you, so we can end the thing. We can end our interview. Like it's just crazy. So yeah, but that's Putin, and of course Tucker Carlson is in Russia, and it's not just like the Putin interview. He's doing just general, like, I don't even know what he's attempting to do. He's just like going to Russian talk, trying to like present Russia as like, oh look, it's the ideal anti-woke system, anti-woke culture and society. There's, they go, like, it's so funny. People were like, this guy's never been to Aldi. Like, he was talking like, look, the shopping carts, you can put a coin in and it comes out. Huh, look at that. And it's like, bro, that's not like almost all these like different stores, like, I'm thinking even Trader Joe does that too. I don't know. I haven't been to one, but Aldi, yeah, they do that. The quarter into the shopping cart, which can be annoying at times because, like, sometimes we do DoorDash and then they'll have an Aldi order, but then I don't have any coins to take out the carts. So, that's a bit annoying, but otherwise, yeah, man. So here, while he's holding these like interviews with Putin, Tucker Carlson interviews with Putin, and also just general sort of documentaries of just Russian life and how it differs from ours, and also just talking about like the food prices and such, or who knows what else he's doing. There was, of course, the death of Alexei Navalny, who died in prison pretty suddenly. Actually, they're saying that the last time they spoke with him, he was in good spirits, healthy, and then suddenly he collapses and dies. And they're trying to like, again, like this guy was very problematic, but of course you see a lot of liberals whose only like platform with Russia is just Putin's bad. We have to depose Putin. So they supported this Alexei Navalny, who was exposing corruption in Putin's sort of regime. So like in that instance, like, okay, because he did expose a lot of corruption, but Alexei Navalny is also pretty fascistic himself. So again, whenever the United States is supporting some sort of opposition leader, it's never going to be some leftist populist sort of figure, like never, because of course a leftist populist is going to fundamentally rearrange the economic system and not sell the country out to massive multinational corporations. So that's what, of course, what they want to happen in Russia under Alexei Navalny, who's dead now. So it's crazy, and it's just crazy to think about how they're presenting Navalny as a sort of martyr, right, for standing up to Putin, exposing corruptions and such. But then you have somebody like Julian Assange. He did expose corruption and war crimes, and he's about to be thrown away into prison for the rest of his life. And if he suddenly dies in jail under suspicious circumstances, they're not going to make a peep about this. None of the news is going to say anything about it. Like, so it's very, very clearly hypocritical. Again, they pick and choose who to support and who to present as the good guy and bad guy. So, yeah, reading at least from ABC News, just on Alexei Navalny and his widow and the continued resistance, #resistance to Putin. This is so crazy, so stupid. So yeah, so here, reading from ABC News, the widow of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny vowed on Monday to continue his fight against the Kremlin while authorities denied his mother access to a morgue where his body is believed to be held after his death last week in an Arctic penal colony. With her voice cracking at times in a video posted on social media, Yulia Navalnaya accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of killing her husband in the remote prison and alleged that officials' refusal to hand over the body to her mother-in-law was part of a cover-up. Russian authorities said that the cause of Navalny's death Friday at the age of 47 is still unknown. The results of an investigation are likely to be questioned abroad. Many Western leaders have already said they hold Putin responsible for the death. Navalny's death has deprived the Russian opposition of its most well-known and inspiring politician less than a month before an election that is all but certain to give Putin another 6 years in power. It dealt a devastating blow to many Russians who had seen Navalny as a rare hope for political change amid Putin's unrelenting crackdown on opposition. Navalny had been in prison since January 2021, who returned to Moscow after recuperating in Germany from a nerve agent poisoning that he blamed on the Kremlin. He received 3 prison terms since his arrest on a number of charges he has rejected as politically motivated. Quote, they are cowardly and meanly hiding his body, refusing to give it to his mother, and lying miserably while waiting for the trace of poison to disappear, Navalnaya said, suggesting her husband might have been killed with a Novichok-style nerve agent. So that's essentially what they're saying here, that he most likely was poisoned again and that he died in prison. I mean, again, very likely, yeah, he did. Very, very likely he did. So that's not me saying that, like, it's good what happened to Alexei. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with Prigozhin. You know, I said, you know, for a while that, like, yeah, he's gonna die, and he did. His plane exploded. It's just crazy, man. Oh my god. Crazy. I mean, yeah, Putin is just, you know, I think, like, sometimes I think of Putin and, you know, I'm thinking about Dune, which is coming up soon. And yeah, he's just like, he's the Padishah Emperor. Like, he's just like, that's what he is. It's crazy. I'm just thinking about the memes from Prigozhin. It's just, Saigo! Like, oh man. And I'm just thinking about, like, another meme where it's like, we have Lenin, like, Mom, we need Lenin. And it's like, we have Lenin at home. And it's just Alexei Navalny. Like, yeah, so, yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of videos coming out from Navalny, a lot of anti-Muslim sentiments and, you know, ultra-nationalist sentiments, possible Nazi connections, that too, like, that's all been coming to light. So, of course, a lot of liberals, because they just hate Putin, they can overlook that for whatever reason. Again, as I said, they're never going to support a leftist populist in terms of, like, an opposition figure. So there's going to be some ultra-nationalist, you know, fascist leader who's no different than Putin, really, but, you know, he's willing to cooperate and collude with multinational corporations. So that's, yeah. So that's just the death of Navalny. And, of course, there's many other reports that will be highlighted later on as details come out, as they're saying they're denying the mother access, Navalny's mother, access to the body. So there's so much that they're going to cover up, which is obvious. I mean, this is just, yeah, they obviously killed him and poisoned him. It's interesting that they did it now, but again, you know, they have their reasonings for the timing. Yeah, so it's unfortunate. And of course, you know, who knows what would happen to Navalny's widow. And I heard that she even got, like, suspended temporarily on Twitter, so there's that happening. So who knows what's happening behind the scenes. There's so much at play. But yeah, that is at least the, you know, different conflicts. There's, of course, the Israel conflict, the Gaza-Israel genocide, and then there is the Ukraine conflict and the political bargainings in the West to continue support, send aid, even though they're starting to make losses, devastating losses. And then, of course, there's Russia and Putin with the recent Tucker Carlson interview, which many people are going to dissect, which, again, like, it's an important interview. You know, it's Putin explaining his reasoning, so it probably pays to pay attention to what he's saying. Yeah. And then, of course, the death of Navalny, an important opposition figure, as Russia, as they're saying, enters a new election. Yeah, man. It's just crazy. Crazy to think about. So, I at least wanted to highlight, because I did talk about some other, like, economic issues and possible recessions. So, I did want to highlight specifically on these quarterly reports and, you know, countries like the UK entering recession. So this is a sign for things to come. So I just wanted to focus here. I mean, again, they also showed Israel, as a result of this war, their economy is also shrinking. So again, like, there is a sign of things to come, and it's not a good sign. So reading from CNBC, the UK economy slipped into a technical recession in the final quarter of last year. Initial figures showed Thursday. The Office for National Statistics said the UK's gross domestic product shrank by 0.03% in the final 3 months of the year, notching the second consecutive quarterly decline. Though there is no official definition of a recession, 2 straight quarters of negative growth is widely considered a technical recession. Economists polled by Reuters have produced a consensus forecast of negative 0.1% for the October to December period. All 3 main sectors of the economy contracted in the fourth quarter, with the ONS noting declines of 0.2% in services, 1% in production, and 1.3% in construction output. Across the whole of 2023, the British GDP is estimated to have increased by just 0.1% compared to 2022. For the month of December, output shrank by 0.1%. So it had been stagnating for a while, and now it's starting to dip. I think I even saw it's kind of crazy. So I saw like GDP effects of COVID, and it's like for some reason, like Italy is performing economically better than the UK, which is kind of unheard of, but that just shows you like what's happening in the world. Yeah, so here, the British, this is Brexit, like that's what they wanted. They wanted Brexit, right? There's your Brexit. So here, the UK Finance Minister, Jeremy Hunt, said that the high inflation remains, quote, the single biggest barrier to growth, end quote, since it is forcing the Bank of England to keep interest rates firm and stymie economic growth. Quote, but there are signs the British economy is turning a corner. Forecasters agree that growth will strengthen over the next few years. Wages are rising faster than prices. Mortgage rates are down and unemployment remains low, end quote, he added. Again, they always have to like spin. It kind of shows you like economics is all just like vibes and stuff, It's like there's all these like metrics of like working people struggling, but then they have to like spin it like, well, you see, wages are on the rise. Like they have to keep positive attitudes because, of course, any sort of panic, any sort of negativity starts a panic, and that's when you have the real collapse. Yeah. So, who knows? Again, I'm no economist, so I can't really predict anything. But the economy has always for the last year since COVID been on shaky legs. And as I showed in another section of the podcast, there are layoffs in multiple. There's layoffs in multiple industries, multiple sectors. So it's not a good sign. It's just not. And this isn't the only country that's entered the technical recession. Let me see here, like a little further from an analyst. So they're saying here, quote, the key indicator to watch is inflation in the services sector, which accounts for the bulk of the UK's economic activity and employment, and reflects the strength of wage growth and consumer demand, which are crucial for the UK's recovery, end quote. Neil Burrell, Chief Investment Officer at Premier Mitten Investors, said Thursday's figures and the softer-than-expected inflation data, quote, may give rise to some concern over economic growth in the coming years, end quote. Continuing, quote, most sectors of the economy were weak, but the optimists will point to the fact that there's plenty of scope to cut interest rates should the current trend in inflation and growth accelerate. It's always crazy when you have these like brokers and investors are talking about like, well, there's a point, like their framework for the economy is very different because they can only look at these numbers, and their concern is like, well, yeah, there could be some decline, there could be some stagnation through the years, but they're only concerned about like the effects of the shareholders, but the people on the ground, like they're not really thinking that situation. They're not paying attention to gas prices and the food prices, rent prices. That they don't concern themselves with that. Like child poverty is a very real concern in the UK. Food insecurity, like it's just crazy. And again, like they're just not thinking about like, oh, there could be the coming years a slow recovery, but it's like a slow recovery can be a death sentence for working people. Like, so it's just crazy to see like how people fall through the cracks like this, and this is just the fact of life. Like, yeah, that's at least the bulk of my international analysis. Now I do want to highlight on some natural phenomenon and weather events and such. So wanted to talk at least just different notes and articles. So reading from CNN, certainly a subject that I want to highlight on is the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, which is ongoing, and just our basic complacency with the pandemic and our response. Like, it's just kind of crazy to see how like Americans are just so normalized with this pandemic. And there's like even like hints of the CDC even relaxing isolation guidelines because they want people back in work. It's just crazy now to try to like apply for a job. Again, I'm not really seriously trying to apply for jobs, but even though I know I should, but it's just like this, like the job market sucks. They want people back in the office, or they want like special experience and certification. It's just like, it's just a pain in the ass. And like, I don't know, man. Like they just like like there's nothing to look forward to. That's why they have to like pressure you with like poverty and starvation and all this shit. Like it's just like they know that it sucks. They know it's a meat grinder, but it's like they don't care because like they throw you into the meat grinder. Yeah. So reading here at least, man. Again, sometimes I talk and like I realize like I can sound like petulant and immature, but truly it's just like maybe back in the day when wages actually could earn a living, I would tolerate that treatment at the jobs, but they don't now. That's the thing. That's why my main argument is like the bullshit that you have to deal with at work isn't even worth the pay because it can't even afford a basic standard of living. Like it's crazy, and the only opportunities is to climb this corporate ladder, which like I don't want to do. I don't want to climb a corporate ladder. It's just like I hate this so much. I hate everything. Anyway, but reading at least now, again, because everything now is about the economy, so, they want to like relax COVID, like guidelines, isolation guidelines. Yeah, man, it's just messed up. It's just messed up. Again, the United States is just like, okay, we want the COVID pandemic to be gone, but it's like, that's not how pandemic works. And then, like, again, if I wear a mask, and again, I try to stay consistent with mask wearing, but I live in a very small town, and people act weird with you if you wear a mask. It's just like the peer pressure is very real. It's crazy. It's crazy. So yeah. So here from CNN, California and Oregon recently became the first states to break with the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on how long a person infected with COVID-19 should isolate, saying that people who test positive are no longer expected to isolate it for at least 5 days, and those without symptoms don't have to isolate at all. Like that's just like that's insane. And it's crazy that that's coming from California and Oregon. They're just straight up like, just get back to work. We don't care. This is crazy what we're dealing with. So the CDC is considering a shift to its COVID-19 isolation guidelines to say that people no longer need to isolate unless they have been fever-free for 24 hours and their symptoms are mild or improving, according to the Washington Post. In a statement Tuesday, the agency told CNN that there were no changes to announce at this time. Quote, "We will continue to make decisions based on the best evidence and science to keep communities healthy and safe," spokesperson David Daigle said. Wastewater surveillance data published by the CDC suggests that COVID-19 is still circulating at high levels across the country, and experts emphasize that until any new recommendations are announced, most people should continue to follow the CDC's current guidelines. Isolating for at least 5 days after you test positive for COVID-19, then wearing a mask for at least 10 days after a positive test. If you're not fever-free for 24 hours without taking fever-reducing medication, at day 5, you should isolate longer. So that's at least the main proposals. And again, the fact that they're even reporting this and like saying, well, there's possible changes that are on the horizon, I guess it's sort of just like preparing the public. But of course, the public, the average American public doesn't give a fuck about COVID. Like people just don't give a shit about it. Yeah, man. And it's just crazy too, because like there's other stuff coming out now. Like there's the measles outbreak supposedly. Like it's just, oh my god, we're like falling into a fucking dark age, man. Like it's just like all these different diseases coming back, and the public doesn't give a shit. Like it's just crazy. And this is why a lot of the times I have a hard time connecting with people, because it's like I'm talking literally to a medieval peasant, and it's not their fault. It's like the entire system has created, certain people like this that don't incentivize educating themselves, having social consciousness. This establishment does not want a socially conscious public, because then that socially conscious public is going to demand better, actually want to demand for a change and improvement in daily lives. Like, hey, yeah, man, it's not, there are a lot of the times where like I'm just very pessimistic about the American public, But sometimes I see stuff, especially in young people. I see this activism, and it's just like, okay, well, that at least I can put some hope in. So that's really all you can hope for. But yeah, CDC guidelines, proposals being relaxed, and possible isolation guidelines, just basically having like a day of isolation. I mean, I bet some jobs are straight up just gonna be like, no, just come in, wear a mask. There's some jobs that don't even want you to wear a mask. Like, yeah, it's just crazy to think about everything happening. But yeah, that's CNN reporting on the CDC and just like COVID and such. I did want to talk about, that's at least, one aspect of like natural disasters or, like natural phenomenon. But then there's also climate guidelines and disasters to pay attention to. And I do live in a state that is susceptible to multiple climatic events, such as weather and hurricanes, drought, cold weather, blizzards and snowstorms, ice storms. So yeah, I mean, Texas has been ranked as like one of the most like susceptible states to the current climate crisis. So we kind of get hit with everything. So that's why it pays to have some preparations in mind. I mean, Texas in general is just kind of known as like a prepper state, but usually for the wrong reasons, for like right-wing reasons, right-wing sort of agitation, like possible, boogaloo, that sort of thing. But yeah, so reading from the Texas Tribune, they're reporting on how Texans can prepare themselves for a possible extreme weather event and, droughts and such, droughts or wildfires, blizzards, ice storms, hurricanes, that, just all kinds of stuff. Yeah, man. So reading here from the Texas Tribune, they have guidelines actually for like a disaster kit. And just read some of the things here. So here, they're saying here, a basic disaster kit should include enough food, water, and first aid supplies to last several days. During emergencies like winter storms or hurricanes, it may be necessary to have enough supplies to last up to 2 weeks. So I have enough containers here for almost like 30 days, like empty gallon containers. So, when that, we recently had a cold freeze, which I did kind of overreact to. Well, I mean, I didn't have like a panic, but I was just like, let me just have everything in order in case this turns into another blizzard situation, which is now like, yeah, we're almost like at 3 years now. That's kind of crazy. 3 years since that last blizzard we had. But yeah, it's kind of crazy that they have to tell people this. And this is sort of the mindset now that people have to have just in general with life, given our compromised infrastructure and the sort of escalating climate crisis that's going to continue. Yeah, people now have to become preppers just out of necessity and to have their own supplies in order, basic survival skills in a grid down situation. Like, again, like I do all this training and I shouldn't say training, but research into preparations. And I try not to like overwhelm friends and family. Again, like in the COVID pandemic, I was a bit heavy handed and I just told them straight up, prepare for this, have supplies. And of course that did alienate some of those relationships because they just couldn't sense the crisis that we're in. And even with everything that's happened, they still don't have this like urgency. So that's why like, I've kind of just taken the back seat now where it's like, I'm just going to let things happen and worry about myself because that seems to be the only thing I can do. It's unfortunate to see those that you love not have any sense of survival about the current crisis. Anyway, so, reading at least from Texas Tribune, they're at least trying to put out some information so people can have some preparation. So here they're saying the American Red Cross recommends you have the following basic supplies in your kit. So water, 1 gallon per person per day. Non-perishable food like canned or dry goods. A flashlight, battery-powered or hand-cranked radio, which is something I could probably use. Extra batteries, a first aid kit, prescription medications and medical items, multi-purpose tools such as screwdrivers, a knife, a plier, sanitation and personal hygiene items such as wet wipes, copies of personal documents, cell phone with chargers and or portable battery banks, family and emergency contact information, extra cash, sleeping bags or warm blanket, or even like those foil blankets, those survival blankets, and a map of your area. I could use a map actually. So this article illustrates multiple disaster scenarios. They illustrate hurricanes, winter storms. Let me see here. Extreme heat, wildfires, droughts. Yeah, so that's at least important details and information that they can present. Of course, we Texas residents have to prepare for so much because our state has a very compromised infrastructure. Again, one other aspect that is important is your community and the networks that you have with your neighbors. At least I try to present myself politely with my neighbors, but some people are just not really going to be open-minded, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like one of my older neighbors she's at least warmed up to me. So, that's good to have somebody who's not like immediately intimidated by me. Again, like I'm a big guy, I guess, I can see why people would think, like, what's this guy up to, because I do keep to myself. I can be a bit reclusive. I'm a bit shy and awkward. And that, for a lot of people are huge red flags. But again, it takes time for me to warm up with people. So all I can really hope is that in a crisis situation, I don't have neighbors who are immediately intimidated by me. Because again, that's where like a lot of fear comes into play. And I don't mean like a grid down situation where there's still some semblance of control, some semblance of stability. I mean like just complete like a breakdown of the social order, you could say. That's something that I don't want people to think that I'm a threat for them. Anyway, yeah, it's a bit of like a lower class community. So, it's on the street, so you don't know who you're dealing with. I'm pretty sure some of my neighbors might be drug dealers. I mean, I don't know. I just don't know what happens here. I kind of keep to myself that way. Yeah, so, and in fact, actually, like a couple weeks ago, there was some people that were arrested by like, like not even like undercover like cops. Like I think there were feds, like either DEA, because they came out with like the vests and everything. They came out with the rifles, like, so it was some pretty heavy shit then, if they were coming out like that with like, plainclothes vehicles and such. Yeah, so yeah, man, that's that kind of neighborhood. It's the ghetto. It's the ghetto. You might have heard some dogs barking. Like that's the sort of neighborhood I live in. So I do have some interesting neighbors. So it's just like something to think about in a grid down situation. Because like it's it's one thing to gain the trust of my neighbors. It's another thing for me to gain trust. So yeah. So anyway, so this Texas Tribune went over some preparation details. I did want to talk about some other weather events. Yeah, so for here, they're talking about this recent sort of weather event. They call it an atmospheric river in Southern California. So it's interesting to see now California having these like monsoons now. I mean, they sort of have seasonally, but this is unprecedented rainfall and snowfall because they have the mountains as well. So yeah, there's a lot of rain being dropped onto California, especially Southern California. Snow into the Sierra Mountains, Sierra Nevada mountains. And it's so funny too because like they have, of course, the concrete river system, which has been dry for so long. Some people even say like, what are these rivers doing here? And then of course now you see the reason that they have those canals because there's just like all kinds of water being dropped. And they're saying even with this amount of water being dropped, most of it's going out into the ocean, so it's not technically lifting the drought. It's just like, that's just crazy to think about. So rating from KTLA, and their reports at least on this weather, event, the rain seasons, the monsoon. So here, KTLA 5, the latest atmospheric river began soaking areas of Southern California with heavy rain Monday morning, although some communities had yet to see any significant precipitation. Rain totals for Metro Los Angeles were generally under 1 inch as of 6 a.m., with over an inch along coastal Ventura County. Santa Barbara County has seen the highest rain totals, 2 to 5 inches, leading to localized flooding, which, among other issues, prompted the closure of the Santa Barbara airport. Quote, we'll start to see the rain shift more towards the south throughout the day, said KTLA 5's meteorologist Henry DiCarlo. Quote, Orange County and the Inland Empire won't see much. Some might even wonder what the deal is with the storm, but we know it has a big deal in some areas. Yeah, so like there's like risks of landslide and such. And yeah, just general flash flooding, and of course, in the mountains, there's snowfall to deal with. So, I mean, again, it's pretty intense weather. Again, this is just a new age of the climate where whenever you get a weather event, it's like turned to 11. So it's just like unprecedented rain or flooding. And then, of course, there's going to be a new cycle of drought, and there's going to be a record drought and wildfires. So it's just going to be that contrast through the seasons. Same thing with Texas. We have some, periods of extreme cold, and then we get the warm back. I mean, we might get even to the 80s this week. Like, that's just kind of crazy to think about in February. Yeah, so that's at least the rain that's happening there. According to the National Weather Service, rain totals of 2 to 5 inches are forecasted for the valleys and coastal areas, and up to 8 inches in the lower elevation mountains. So that's pretty intense flooding. And in here, mountains above 7,500 feet should see 1 to 3 feet of snow. So yeah, rain and snow. Just unprecedented levels. And of course, with that snow, it's going to melt, and that will feed into the rivers. So, I mean, there was plenty of concern over like the snow caps in the mountains. So I guess in that sense that they're kind of glad about it. But then again, like, if you have all the snow that falls and then the following heat in summer melts it all away quicker than usual, then you can have flooding, so that's just the unfortunate like predicament that they're in. So yeah, that's just the rain there. Again, people went to California to avoid the rain, and now they're getting a pretty significant monsoon. Yeah, let me actually see here, because this article was posted on the 19th, so I mean, it's still ongoing. Let me actually look at the radar here. So yeah, currently the system is sort of dying out. Who knows if they're going to get a new wave? But yeah, I would assume these sort of like systems that it comes in waves. So they might have a clear couple weeks, and then a new wave would come. So who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, so that is at least the weather events here. And as I talk about climate change in California and in Texas, and the drastic weather events that can occur or that are projected, it's important to discuss climate change, because again, you're going to deal with climate denial becoming more mainstream as people. I mean, it's I wouldn't even say denial. It's more like skepticism. Like, they'll say climate change is real. They'll acknowledge the human industrial effects, but they try to mitigate it, or they try to say like, well, like especially with like the winter events that occur, it's like, well, I thought it was climate, global warming, but how come we have snow? Why do we have snow in Texas? That sort of thing. Just to sow uncertainty, right? Because it is such a dramatic crisis that we're in, unprecedented crisis. This is where, and the only way to truly change it is to fundamentally address our economic system, the industries that are at play, which of course many people, including liberals, are resistant to. Like, they don't seriously want to make the changes that are needed in order to prevent a horrific, climate extinction. Again, like, you just talk about like Taylor Swift and her use of private jets, and it's like a lot of liberals would just be like, don't talk about that. We're not focused on that. Like, they just try to ignore it, but it's like, no, this is very relevant. So yeah. So as I, mentioned that, so there's the denial, just outright denial of what's happening, or the skepticism, which is trying to like mitigate or, undermine the seriousness of the crisis, acknowledging it, but also trying to play, more of a soft approach where it's like, well, maybe it's not as bad. Maybe you're overreacting on the timeline. Yeah. So here, just reading from the New York Times, they're reporting that And this is sort of something that was, I just like randomly found an article on it. It's kind of a shame that this is sort of a quiet thing. But here they're talking about Ross Gelbspan, who was an investigative journalist who uncovered these climate denials and their links to the oil and gas industry. Ross Gelbspan recently passed away on January 27th, and he was at the age of 84. So I do want to read the New York Times sort of obituary in a sense about this. So Ross Gelbspan, an investigative journalist whose reporting on climate change exposed a campaign of disinformation by oil and gas lobbyists to sow doubts about global warming, a denialism that was embraced by Republican officials and in some cases by a credulous news media, died on January 27th at his home in Boston. He was 84 years old. The cause was chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, his wife Ann Gelbspan said. Mr. Gelbspan's career included reporting on dissidents in the Soviet Union and on FBI harassment of domestic critics, and his interest in the climate crisis, like those other subjects, came from a sense of outrage that powerful interests were suppressing information needed for democracy. Quote, I didn't get into the climate issue because I love trees. I tolerate the trees, he said on YouTube last year. Quote, I get into the issue because I learned the coal industry was paying a handful of scientists under the table to say nothing about what was happening to the climate, end quote. In a 1995 cover story for Harper's Magazine, headlined The Heat Is On, which he expanded into a 1997 book with the same title, Mr. Gelbspan shined a light on a group of scientists that coal and oil groups had paid to tell lawmakers and journalists that global warming wasn't a serious threat. He dug up a 1991 memo from the fossil fuel lobby, calling for a strategy to, quote, reposition global warming as theory rather than fact, end quote. At a news conference, President Bill Clinton held up the book and said he was reading it. Quote, in The Heat Is On, Ross was the first to do serious debunking of the campaign by the oil and gas companies to promote and finance a pseudoscientific narrative of denial. Robert Kuttner, co-editor of the magazine The American Prospect, to which Mr. Gelbspan contributed, said in an email, quote, he combined a deep concern about our common future with the passionate skill of a dogged investigative reporter, end quote. Mr. Gelbspan wrote in Harper's that one of the prominent climate skeptics, Richard S. Lindzen of MIT, speaking on behalf of a coal lobbying group, testified in 1994 at a government hearing that a doubling of carbon emissions over the next century would cause temperatures to rise no more than a negligible 0.3 degrees Celsius. Since that testimony, the planet has already warmed 0.86 degrees Celsius according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. In a second book, Boiling Point, 2004, Mr. Gelbspan was tough on his own profession, accusing reporters of laziness and falling for the, quote, manufactured denial of the fossil fuel industry. Many journalists, he said, were undermined by their ethic of even-handedness, which added false balance to stories that reflexively included climate skeptics. Quote, for many years, the press accorded the same weight to the skeptics as it did to the mainstream scientists, he wrote. The issue of balance is not relevant when the focus of the story is factual. In this case, what is known about the climate comes from the largest and most rigorously peer-reviewed scientific collaboration in history, end quote. So yeah, pretty impressive career, highlighting the skepticism that is manufactured, or denial, first off, by the oil and gas industry, and then also just the skepticism and the need to be objective by the media, not taking a firm stance. Again, they try to present, journalism is presented as like, well, we just have to present different opinions and then we'll just let the marketplace of ideas, win, right? But, the thing about it is that like most Americans, they're either anti-intellectual or at the very least, they just get bored by science. So like, again, a lot of the times with these like science skeptics and denialists, they try to appeal to the common man. They try to, they're like, you're going to listen to this nerd? Like that sort of thing, It's just unfortunate, but yeah. So, he's calling out the funding by the oil and gas industries, and as well as the lack of backbone from the media their inability to actually do some real journalism and point out discrepancies. And this is just again, I just randomly found this out, so those books I certainly would need to check out. But as the climate crisis continues to accelerate, and the lack of reporting that's going to be in place, because again, a lot of the times they report different like weather events, like unprecedented weather events, and they don't give proper context as to why these disasters are becoming more frequent or more devastating. Man, it's just unfortunate. And it's just crazy to see this increasing climate crisis, and then also being told that like, whoa, where do you see yourself in 50 years? Like, I have to plan a career for 50 years, and it's like, look what's down the line that nobody cares for, nobody wants to prepare for. Or, I hear a lot of the times it's like, well, it's going to happen anyway, so you might as well, work and make as much money as possible. It's just like, this is sort of like the mindset that I'm supposed to adopt. This is why I feel so disillusioned, because like everything that's happening is so obvious, but then you're just told, don't think about it, just work. It's just, I'm sorry, man. I just can't with it. Again, I see all these problems, and it's like, especially with my family, and it's like, I'm not opposed to stepping up to it, but it's like when you see the mountain of challenges that are presented, it's like, first off, I'm one person. This idea that I'm just going to get like this 6-figure job that's going to help everybody, that's incredibly unrealistic. And also it's like, it's by design that we're not supposed to work through this. Like you talk to anybody, and like everybody's dealing with some sort of underlying problem that is sort of like just rotting away. And basically it's like an infection, right? Like, if you don't deal with this infection, it's going to be a mortal wound. It's like, you kind of see this with everybody, except for, of course, the really super rich people who own everything. But us working people, we're just kind of seeing things slip through our fingers. Of course, everybody's in denial about it, but it's like, it's very apparent. It's very apparent. And this is the problem that I've always had about living in like an upper middle class area, where like people can afford to be disconnected from the real world. And so when they see others failing at life, they can't possibly think about any broader systemic problem. It's always, you're an individual failure. But it's like, you have millions of individual failures in this country. So after a certain point, like, there has to be a broader explanation. Like, my situation isn't so unique. I don't even consider myself a failure to begin with. But it's like my struggles and my inability to establish like a proper, solid foothold and stability. Like, this isn't unique for like young college graduates. Like, everybody's dealing with these problems, and the only way to get ahead is if you had good connections in life. Like, surprisingly, when you actually provide for your children and provide stability and give them connections, more than likely, not all the time, but more than likely, they're going to succeed than compared to those who have to pull themselves by the bootstraps, because that doesn't exist. Like, the people who push the bootstraps mentality almost certainly don't do that for their children. Like it's a farce. Like, it's supposed to be a fraud. Like, it's a racket, everything. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, man, there's just not much to look forward to. And then, of course, you look at this escalating climate crisis, and it's like, that's sort of a done deal. It's like, if the climate goes to shit, then what else is there to do? Like at that point, the economy means nothing, because nobody can survive. Like, it's like, what's the economy going to be? How is the economy going to be important if all our crops die because it's the climate is too unstable, or there's not enough clean water, or the soil is poisoned? Like, that's sort of the end of civilization once it gets to that point. So, and I'm sorry, like, all the like the factory farming, like, there's like the proposals of like the factory meats, or most definitely possibly insects, for protein, right? Like, the food production has to drastically change. It needs to start now. Like, it's not something that can be done down the line. Like, it has to be done now before the crisis gets worse. Anyway, I'm diving into a different subject matter entirely. But yeah, I wanted to speak about this journalist exposing climate denialism, and just in general, like, it's so interesting, man. I wonder how he felt like reaching the end of his life and doing all this work and then seeing basically like nothing come to pass. Just knowing that like the only solace that he can have that he's going to pass away before this crisis consumes the world. Like, it's just crazy. Like, it's just crazy to think about old people who genuinely want to leave a better world behind. And like, I'm just like, it makes me sad, you know, like this is probably going to be like the last generation of old people that's going to have like any sort of comfort in their last days. And this is such a unique situation because like for a long time, the only people who would live to like an old peaceful life were, you know, the literal like kings and queens who owned everything, right? Even then, you know, living to that age was like very rare thing in that position. So, you know, old people today, in terms of like human history, is just like very unique and very fleeting. Because, you know, the thought of me living to 80 years old is just like, that's not going to happen. Like, I'm sorry. I would love to live to be as long as possible. You know, my great grandma, she lived to be 106 years old. That, you know, that's a blessing, you know. So, like, I would very much like to live as long as possible, but, you know, I don't see myself reaching to like, God, you know, sometimes I don't even think I'll make it to 50. Like, that's how depressing it gets, you know? Like, I want to, but, you know, you don't know what the world's going to look like in a couple years. And I'm 28 years old. No, 27. I keep aging myself up. I am 27 years old. So that's just, you know, right around the corner. 20 years can pass very quickly. So it's, God, man, I'm getting old. Yes, the end of my life at 27 years old. Like, anyway. So at least, you know, that's the bulk of what I wanted to speak on today. This has been a long episode, and I've recorded over multiple days because, like, for like the first day, my throat was getting worn out, like, you know, just talking too low, just talking so much. So, yeah. And then, of course, today there was like maintenance. I wanted to record. So, whatever, you know, at least I'm at the end point. So, I do want to appreciate those listening. You know, I did speak at length today, and will certainly, you know, keep y'all updated. I do appreciate those listening and those supporting. You can subscribe to my Patreon, which is a bit dead, unfortunately. I do want to try to get them more active, but yeah, certainly check it out for early access, and check out my YouTube as I work on other projects. As I said, yeah, there's much to focus on, much to get rolling. Much appreciate the support, tuning in. Definitely follow me on social media. Hang in there if you're going through anything. We're all in this together. And I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.